Before we begin, listener, remember to gently tap like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Tonight, I'll take you through the quiet halls where the walls still breathe, where every sound means something, even when no one's there to make it. 5 stories, each one a whisper left behind by those who never truly left. So, turn down the lights, lie still, and listen carefully, because some sounds don't stop when you wake up. Story 6. The lighthouse that waited for footsteps. I arrived at the old lighthouse just after dusk, when the sea had turned the color of bruised steel and the horizon dissolved into a single, trembling line. The structure shouldn't have been active anymore. Every record said it was decommissioned decades ago. But its light was on, not a steady beam, not a rhythmic rotation, just a slow, deliberate pulse, as if someone at the top were turning the lamp by hand. I stepped onto the rocky path, waves slamming below with a force that shook the railings. The wind carried the tang of salt and something older whetstone, rotting timber, and a faint metallic scent like water left too long inside iron pipes. As I approached the tower, the light pulsed again, once, then again, slower, heavier, almost like a heartbeat. At the door, I paused, listening. For a moment there was only the sea. Then, from inside the lighthouse, a footstep descended the spiral staircase. One step, then another, measured, careful, descending toward me, and a voice low, hoarse, impossibly tired drifted through the crack in the door. "You're late." For a long moment, I didn't move. The wind whipped past my ears. The sea roared beneath the cliff. But the voice from inside the lighthouse carried with an unnatural clarity, quiet, yet heavy, as though spoken from just inches away. I pushed the door gently. It creaked inward with surprising ease. The air inside was warm, much warmer than it should have been, in a structure left to salt and storms for decades. The first thing I noticed was the smell: damp rope, old lantern oil, and something faintly metallic beneath it all, a note so sharp it scraped the back of my throat. The spiral staircase spiraled upward into darkness. Rust flecked the railing like dried blood. The footstep I'd heard earlier didn't repeat. "Hello," I called softly. My voice didn't echo. It just disappeared, swallowed by the tight coil of the stairwell. I stepped inside fully, closing the door behind me. The moment the latch clicked, the lighthouse seemed to exhale, a deep, hollow sigh rolling through the beams, like old bones settling. Then I heard it again. A single footstep, this time above me, slow, dragging, as though the person had grown tired halfway down the stairs and changed their mind. I looked up, torch beams slicing through the darkness. The steps were empty, but the air felt disturbed warm where it should have been cold. The dust on the railing looked brushed aside, like a hand had trailed there only moments ago. Is someone up there? Nothing, just the steady, rhythmic pulse of the lantern high atop the tower. A pulse that issued no sound, only thick, rhythmic light pushing through the narrow stairwell, brightening and dimming like a single, deliberate breath. I climbed a few steps. Each one groaned tiredly beneath my weight. When I reached the first landing, I noticed the floorboards had indentations shallow, oval-shaped depressions. Footsteps, not fresh, but not fully settled either, as if someone used these stairs often, but never long enough to leave true dust behind. Another step, thump, much closer now. From the landing above me, I lifted my torch. Again, nothing, but the railing vibrated beneath my hand, faint, like someone had just gripped it hard enough to leave it trembling. "Hello?" I whispered again. This time, there was a reply. Not a voice, not words. A soft, rhythmic tapping rose from the metal staircase above, tapping down the steps with careful precision, like someone descending slowly, testing each rung with the tip of their boot. One tap, pause. Another tap, pause. But no footstep followed. No wait, no breathing. Just that tapping, moving downward toward me, but leaving the staircase completely empty. A chill crawled down my spine. I held the torch tighter. Then the tapping stopped. A long silence, until something brushed the back of my neck. Warm, unmistakably human, and a whisper, so close it trembled against my skin. "Keep climbing." The whisper scorched the back of my neck warm, breathy, intimate. But when I spun around, the landing behind me was empty. The lighthouse door was still shut. The sea crashed far below. Everything else was still, too still. I pressed my palm against my neck. Warm. The warmth lingering there was not mine. The lantern above pulsed again, its light washing down the stairwell in slow waves. Each pulse felt heavier than the last, as if the light had weight pressure pushing downward through the tight coil of the tower. I swallowed and continued climbing. The tapping I'd heard earlier resumed almost immediately. Not above me this time, all around me, echoing through the metal ribs of the lighthouse. Tap, tap, tap. Soft. Light. Too light. Like fingertips tapping the metal staircase instead of boots. Then louder. Clack, clack. Something harder striking the rails. Then softer again. Then louder. Then softer. A rhythm with no reason. Like someone testing different ways to be heard. Halfway up the next flight, my torch flickered. The shadows bent. Not shifted bent, as though pulled toward something above. Wind tunneled briefly down the stairwell. A sudden gust that extinguished every sound of the ocean outside. The lighthouse swallowed the roar of the waves whole. Only one sound remained. A heavy footstep. Thud. I froze. The footstep had weight. More than mine. More than any single person should have carried. I lifted the torch toward the next landing. The beam fizzled, struggling against the thick darkness tightening around the bend. Another footstep. Thud. Then a dragging sound. Shh. Like something sliding its foot along the metal stair. Too weary or too broken to lift it, I backed down a step. The dragging approached slow, deliberate, unhurried, not predatory, patient, measuring me. I forced the torch higher, my hand trembling. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. The dragging stopped instantly. Not faded, not retreated. Stopped, as if the thing on the stairs was holding perfectly still, listening to the shape of my voice. After a long, suffocating pause, something answered, a soft metallic rattling somewhere above like a lantern chain trembling without wind. Then, "Keep climbing." The voice came from directly behind me. I whipped around. Nothing. Empty stairs. Bare railings. Creaking walls. I took another shaky breath, turning back again, and nearly dropped the torch. There was something on the landing above. At first, I thought it was soot, a dark smear on the wall. But soot doesn't breathe. This shadow pulsed in rhythm with the lantern light, swelling and shrinking as if inhaling with each flicker. It stretched along the wall unnaturally tall, elongated limbs trailing down the steps as though trying to reach me. And then I heard it, the sound that made my stomach twist. Footsteps, not on the stairs, on the walls, slow, measured, a person-shaped weight pacing vertically across the metal ribs of the tower. Step, 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 except the steps weren't walking downward. They were circling me, clockwise, around and around the narrow stairwell. The lighthouse groaned with each orbit, the metal protesting under stress it was never meant to bear. I pressed myself against the rail. The air thickened hot, humid, as though something enormous was inhaling the entire stairwell around me. The footsteps grew louder, suddenly right above me, then right beside me, then directly under the stairs I stood on. That's when I made the mistake. I looked down through the metal grating. Something looked back. Just a sliver of a face, half hidden in the gap between stairs, wide, glassy eyes reflecting the pulsing lantern light, a mouth slightly open as if mid-breath, skin slick with seawater. It stared up at me without blinking. My body locked in place. The eyes widened, not in surprise, but recognition, and the figure below whispered gentler than before, almost tender, closer now. The staircase vibrated, metal, weight, footsteps moving too fast to be human. The thing beneath the stairs began climbing directly toward me, not up the steps but through the gaps, pulling itself upward with hands that clung to the underside of the spiral like a spider. I bolted, upward, toward the light that pulsed like a warning or a promise. I didn't look back, but I heard it. I heard all of it. The scraping of nails on metal, the thumping of limbs hitting each rung, the wet rasp of breath growing closer. And over it all, the voice, now everywhere in the tower, whispering with impossible calm. Hurry. The spiral staircase tightened as I climbed, the walls curving inward like a throat. The lantern pulse overhead grew heavier, thicker, each flare of light pushing down the stairwell with a force that felt almost physical, like wading through warm water. Behind me, the creature moved faster, not running, advancing, each motion deliberate, controlled, purposeful. The sound of its scraping against the underside of the stairs sharpened. Shh, thud, shh, thud. Metal shivered. Bolts trembled. Steps groaned beneath my feet. I reached the next landing and dared a glance down. Instant regret. The creature had pulled itself fully into view now. A long, lean shape folding itself unnaturally between the beams. Its limbs clung to the metal framework as though joints were optional. Skin pale, water slick, reflecting the lantern pulse like shifting glass. Its face remained hidden beneath dripping hair, but its breathing filled the stairwell. Deep, slow, wet. The kind of breath someone takes after being underwater too long. I staggered back, nearly tumbling over the railing. The drop spiraled into blackness, deeper than the lighthouse should have allowed. It didn't feel like falling into a stairwell. It felt like falling straight into the ocean. The creature's fingers long, swollen, pruned gripped the railing. Soft, squishy, dead, but strong. It lifted its head then. I wish I hadn't seen the face beneath the hair. skin stretched too tight over cheekbones, eyes washed pale as stormwater, a jaw unhinged slightly as if relearning how to speak. The lantern pulse illuminated the creature's face fully for the first time, and it smiled. Not wide, not monstrous. A small, relieved smile. There you are. My stomach lurched. I don't know you. The smile deepened. But I know you. You answered the light. The lantern above boomed with a pulse so heavy the stairs shook. The creature's pupils dilated. It wants you. I backed up the next flight, heart slamming. The creature followed, but not quickly. It didn't need speed. It moved like someone descending a staircase they'd climbed 1,000 times, pausing only to listen to the pitch of the lantern and adjust its rhythm to match. And then, a sound I hadn't expected. Footsteps above. Heavy, measured, human. I froze mid-step. Someone else was here. The creature froze too. Its head tilted upward sharply, as if hearing something I couldn't. Its expression shifted. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. He's awake. Another footstep from above. A slow thud. Then a long, drawn breath that rattled through the whole tower. The creature whispered with reverence, "Keep climbing. He won't wait long." I didn't want to keep climbing. I wanted to get out of the tower, off the cliff, into the sea, anything but up. But the steps below creaked, the creature shifting its weight, ready to follow me either way. And above, the steps creaked too, another presence descending, trapped between the drowned thing below and the unseen thing above. I forced my legs to move, taking the steps 2 at a time. The air thickened. The lantern's pulse pounded like a heartbeat. As I approached the next landing, a shadow fell across the stairwell from above. Not the creature's. Broader, straighter, human-like. A silhouette appeared at the bend of the stairs. A man's shape, tall, shoulders squared, one hand dragging along the railing with a metal scrape. I stopped breathing. The creature below whispered up the stairwell, "Keeper, he's here." The silhouette paused, lifted its head, and began descending. Not slowly, not dragging, purposeful, steady, too steady. The metal railing groaned under its grip. I backed into the wall, eyes darting between the approaching figure above and the creature below. No escape. Nowhere to run. The figure above spoke, the voice cracked with age, yet thick with authority. "You brought the light back." I didn't. "Don't lie." The creature below answered him. He followed the pulse. The man stepped into view at last. The lighthouse obscured his features, shadows swallowing everything except the faint outline of his eyes. Cold, reflective, like glass lit from behind. His boots landed on the step above me with a weight that vibrated the entire tower. The creature behind me lowered its head. Reverent, obedient. The man extended his hand toward me. His palm was burned, badly. Blackened grooves carved deep into the flesh. "Lantern burns. Come," he said softly. "It's time you see what answers the light." When I didn't move, he leaned forward, so close I could smell salt and old smoke on his breath. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't make me drag you like the last one." The creature behind me inhaled sharply, excited. The tower groaned, and the lantern pulse above began to stutter, slowing, weakening. As if reacting to my indecision, the man's hand tightened in the air between us. Choose. Up or down. Keeper or drowned. Light or sea. The stairwell felt too small for breath. And then, the lantern above went dark. The lighthouse fell silent. Pitch black. Except for one thing. A hand. Not the man's. Not the creature's. Clamped around my wrist in the dark. Warm. Human. A voice at my ear whispered, "Don't trust either of them." And the stairs beneath us began to shake. The hand around my wrist held firm warm. Real. Steady in a way nothing else in the lighthouse felt. For a split second, I clung to that warmth like a lifeline, the only anchor in the darkness that swallowed the stairwell. Then the shaking stopped, not gradually, but instantly, as though some unseen presence had placed a palm against the tower's spine and ordered it to be still. The man above me, the keeper, stopped moving. I couldn't see him, but I felt his posture shift, felt the weight of his attention swing toward the source of the hand gripping me. Below, the drowned creature made a low, tremulous sound, like air being forced through waterlogged lungs. The warm hand tugged me gently. "Move," the voice whispered. "Quietly." I obeyed without thought. My fingers brushed the wall as the unseen guide steered me past a narrow crevice between support beams. I'd walked these stairs minutes ago. This gap hadn't existed then. But now, it felt open. Like something had shifted the structure from within to make room. The keeper's voice broke the darkness. "You can't hide him. Even in the pitch black." The words carried weight. Old anger. Old familiarity. Old rules. The hand tightened around my wrist. Down. The voice breathed. I crouched. My shoulder brushed cold metal. The gap narrowed, then widened again as I shuffled sideways into a space between the lighthouse's inner wall and the stair's spine. My guide moved with absolute certainty, never colliding with metal, never hesitating at corners. Behind us, the keeper's boots clicked. Once, twice, descending. No rush, no panic. The sound of someone who knew the tower would always bend to his pace. The drowned creature clattered up the underside of the stairs, limbs scraping in frantic, jerking motions. "Don't listen to him," the keeper called. "He's not alive. He wants what you have." A hiss, not quite human, rose from below. Nails dragged violently along the metal ribs. My guide whispered, "Neither of them can see in the dark. Keep your breath soft." I held my breath entirely. We slipped deeper into the thin, unseen corridor. The metal around us radiated a faint warmth, as though the lighthouse itself acknowledged our hiding place. The structure creaked gently, not in fear or warning, but almost protective. The keeper's boots paused. "You're making this worse," he said into the dark. His voice softened, not a threat, a plea. "The light is failing. Without him, it dies." The drowned creature skittered closer. I felt vibrations through the metal floor, sharp, uneven. Each movement an act of violence against its own warped limbs. My guide pulled me further into the dark. The smell changed. Sea salt. Yes, but something cleaner beneath it. Fresh rope, brine, a whisper of lantern oil long evaporated. We reached a small, unseen landing behind the lighthouse's outer wall. My guide's hand released me, but only briefly. The voice whispered, "It's safe here. For now." I leaned against the curved inner wall, lungs shaking with silent breaths. A faint glow shimmered from somewhere ahead, a sliver of moonlight leaking through a crack in the tower's structure. Enough to outline the person who'd led me. A man knelt beside me, young, barefoot, clothes torn by water and salt, hair matted, skin pale from cold and exhaustion, but unmistakably human. He lifted a finger to his lips. "Don't speak, unless you need to," I whispered anyway. "Who are you?" His eyes dark, exhausted, met mine. "I'm the one who got out." A chill laced my spine. "You escaped the lighthouse." "No one escapes the lighthouse," he said, voice thin. "Not completely, but I got far enough to learn what the light attracts." Above us, the keeper resumed descending, slow, purposeful. The young man pulled me deeper from view. "If he finds us, he'll drag us both up the tower. And once you reach the lamp..." He stopped short, throat tightening. "What happens at the lamp?" I whispered. His expression cracked, a flicker of terror flashing beneath the calm. "You don't shine it," he said. "You feed it." The tower groaned then, a deep, low shudder that vibrated through every beam. The drowned creature shrieked. The keeper shouted. Metal screamed as two forces collided in the dark, one dragging upward, one pulling downward. The young man squeezed my arm. "That's our chance," he whispered urgently. "While they're fighting, but the way out, there is no way out," he said. "Not from here." My breath hitched. "Then why bring me?" He leaned closer until his whisper shivered against my ear. "Because the lighthouse wasn't waiting for them." His fingers curled around my wrist again. "It was waiting for you." Before I could react, the metal wall beside us split with a sudden crack, a jagged seam of pale light. The lighthouse itself was opening. The young man pulled me through. Behind us, the keeper roared. The drowned creature clawed upward, but inside this narrow passage of moonlight, I felt for the first time the faintest taste of safety, of false relief. Maybe. Yet the tower hadn't crushed me, hadn't claimed me, hadn't silenced me. Not yet. We reached a tiny maintenance platform hidden between the tower's inner skin and its stone shell. Cold night air leaked through shattered mortar. "We climb up," he said, "to the catwalk, before the light remembers what it wants." But the lighthouse pulsed once, a single, distant heartbeat of illumination, and the young man froze. "Too late," he whispered. The pulse of the lighthouse rolled upward through the tower like a shockwave. Slow, heavy, deliberate. A single heartbeat of light, but it didn't shine. It listened. The young man's breath caught. His fingers tightened painfully around my wrist. "No sudden movements," he whispered. "When the light awakens, it searches. For what? For whoever answered it last." The platform trembled beneath us. Dust drifted from the cracks in the stone. The smell of salt thickened until it stung the back of my throat. Far below, the drowned creature hissed like water boiling inside a sealed pipe. Above us, the keeper shouted words blurred by fury, lost inside the tower's vibrating bones. The young man dragged me toward a rusted maintenance ladder bolted to the inner wall. "We go up? Now?" "But you said..." He turned sharply, panic slicing across his face. "It knows where you are." The lighthouse pulse thudded again, closer, sharper, like a lantern flame inhaling. The stone around us warmed. I climbed. The ladder creaked and swayed, bolts grinding inside old mortar. Every few rungs, I felt the tower shiver like a living thing testing its joints. The young man climbed beneath me, occasionally steadying the ladder with one trembling hand. Between breaths, I heard the keeper's boots slam into metal somewhere far below. He was climbing again, higher above. Something else scraped inside the walls, like long nails dragging through the hollow spaces between stone layers. The light, it was moving. How is the light following us? I gasped. It doesn't need a lamp, the young man hissed. The lamp is just where it sleeps. The ladder ended at a narrow hatch, rusted, bent, unwelcoming. The young man pushed me upward. Open it. I can't. You can. It wants your hands. Cold dread punctured my ribs. The light wants me. It called you, he whispered. You came. My fingers shook as I shoved the hatch. It screeched open loud, metallic, impossible to hide. The tower reacted instantly. A violent tremor shook the walls. The drowned creature shrieked. The keeper roared something unintelligible. And above us, a low, resonant hum filled the air. The young man pushed me through the hatch before the tremor could throw us off. I crawled onto a cramped circular walkway, the catwalk just beneath the lantern chamber. The air up here was suffocating, hot, thick with the scent of burning oil and something electrical. The lantern room's glass was shattered. The great lamp at the center, once a magnificent shining mechanism, was shattered, blackened, warped by some old violence. And yet, light pulsed from the broken fragments, crawling over the floor like liquid gold, trying to remember its shape. The young man climbed up beside me. We need to go outside, he said, onto the balcony. Why? Because the tower can't catch you in open air. It can't seal what it doesn't enclose. I stumbled toward the outer door, but the pulse hit again. This time, it spoke, not in words, in memory, my memory. A hand gripping a railing, a storm, a scream swallowed by wind, a beam of light cutting through fog, a shape in the sea reaching upward, my own voice crying for help. Then, soft warmth on my neck, the same warmth that greeted me at the door. I staggered. The lighthouse wasn't calling me. It was calling me back. The young man grabbed my shoulder. Don't listen. They drown you with your own memories. I've never been here before. His grip tightened. His eyes filled with something like pity. You have. Before I could ask, the catwalk buckled. An enormous crack split down the lighthouse wall. From the lantern room, all the way into the maintenance shaft, the drowned creature burst through the lower part of the wall. Its limbs tangled, its mouth open in a silent underwater scream. Shards of stone clung to it like barnacles. The keeper emerged above it, gripping the spiral railing with burned hands. Both froze when the light pulse trembled down the tower's spine. The young man shoved me toward the balcony door. Go. I sprinted. The drowned creature lunged first, but the keeper seized its neck, wrenching it backward with surprising strength. You don't touch him, the keeper growled. He's mine to take. The creature thrashed, limbs bending into terrible angles as it writhed for freedom. The young man slammed into the keeper's side, knocking him off balance. The keeper crashed into the railing, metal screaming under his weight. The lighthouse pulse throbbed again, as if laughing. The balcony door loomed ahead, warped by age but slightly ajar. Through it, wind, moonlight, the roar of the sea, the real world. I lunged for the door. My hand closed around the frame, and the balcony lights flickered on. One by one, faint, white, like eyes opening. Cold air rushed inward, and the light no longer coming from the broken lamp, but from the tower itself spilled across the catwalk, forming a narrow, glowing path that led not toward the balcony, but backward toward the lantern room. No, I whispered. No, no. The lighthouse answered with a deafening pulse. My bones vibrated, my chest seized. Behind me, the keeper shouted, "Don't follow it." The drowned creature shrieked. The young man reached for me. Too late. The light swelled around my ankles, spiraling upward like a chain of warm fingers wrapping around my legs. My torso, my throat, a voice gentle, exhausted, familiar spoke inside my skull. You came back for the rest of me. The balcony door slammed shut. The young man crashed against it, pounding. Fight it. I tried. The light only tightened. The keeper roared, grabbing the railing and hauling himself forward. The drowned creature tore free from his grip and scrambled upward, arms flailing. The lighthouse pulse hammered again. My legs moved without permission, slow, unsteady steps, leading me toward the shattered lantern. No stopletme, go, the light whispered back. I waited. The young man threw himself onto me, trying to pull me back. The keeper seized my other arm, burning grip searing my skin. The drowned creature slammed into my legs, wrapping its swollen hands around my knees. For a moment, just one, all three pulled against the light. A war of desperate bodies against the calm, patient force of the lighthouse. The tower groaned, stone cracked, metal screamed. The light dimmed, just a little, enough for my breath to return, enough for my voice to break free. I screamed. The light pulsed violently, and everything let go at once. The catwalk exploded into fragments. Glass shattered. Stone tore open, and I fell, dragged not toward the lantern, but toward the sea, as if the lighthouse had decided that if it couldn't keep me in its tower, it would return me to the water where it first found me and how. Cold wind roared around me. Waves rose like black mountains below. The last thing I heard before the world went white was the lighthouse whispering, "Come home." I didn't hit the sea. Something caught me. Not hands, not rope. Something smoother like water rising in a single, impossible column, lifting me instead of swallowing me. For a moment I hung suspended above the waves, weightless, breathless, wrapped in a cold embrace that pulsed exactly like the lighthouse's light. The storm clouds parted. A thin moonbeam drifted across the water, and in that faint glow, I saw them. Footprints, dozens of them, pressing into the surface of the sea as though the water had hardened beneath invisible steps. Some prints were sharp, some blurred, some smaller child-sized, all leading away from the base of the lighthouse and out toward the open ocean. My stomach turned. Whatever walked there was not new. The cold column of water holding me began to lower, inch by inch, like a careful hand setting down a fragile object. When my boots touched the first footprint, the water receded instantly, The surface held me, held my weight, held my breath. A voice rose behind me, soft, cracked, as if spoken through salt-clogged lungs. Follow the path. I spun around. The young man stood on the water behind me, barefoot, soaked, eyes shining with reflected moonlight. But something was wrong. His shadow was wrong. It didn't fall behind him. It stretched forward, rippling across the waves, joining the line of footprints. He took a slow step toward me, water rippling outward. "You fell," he said gently. "We all did. The lighthouse doesn't save people. It collects them." My heart hammered. "I'm not going any farther." "You will," he whispered. "When the light calls again." I backed away, but the footprints beneath my feet shifted, turning slightly, angling toward the dark horizon, toward deeper water, toward something waiting. The wind died. The sea flattened. The lighthouse behind us pulsed once, a soft, tired heartbeat, and far out on the horizon, where the moonlight barely touched the water, another lighthouse answered. Its light pulsed back, slow, deliberate, beckoning. The young man smiled sadly, knowingly. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." I turned to run, but the footprints beneath my feet moved before I did. They began walking, taking me with them, and behind me, carried on a wind that didn't blow. The first lighthouse whispered, "Step by step, you'll come home." Story 7. The House That Wandered at Night. I first noticed something was wrong with the house when the front door wasn't where I left it. I'd lived there only 3 nights, an old countryside rental. Cheap, quiet, harmless. Each evening I'd walk the creaking hallway, lock the front door, double-check the windows, simple rituals to make an unfamiliar place feel mine. But tonight, when I reached for the door, it wasn't on the west wall anymore. It was on the north wall, perfectly fitted. Hinges, frame, knob, everything identical, just moved. At first I blamed myself. Dim light, fatigue. But as I stepped back, confusion gave way to dread, because the floorboards had shifted too. The carpet I'd rolled out near the entrance was now pressed against the opposite wall, as if the room had rotated while I slept. I stood very still. Then, from the hallway behind me, came the sound of another door gently clicking shut, followed by soft, deliberate footsteps crossing a room I thought was empty. Slow, measured, coming closer. A whisper drifted from the dark. "Don't look for the exit tonight." The whisper bled into the dark like steam, fading before it reached the edges of the room. I spun toward the hallway, breath lodged high in my throat. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No figure. Just a long corridor stretching into shadow, lined with door frames I didn't recognize. There were only 3 rooms when I moved in. Now I counted 6 openings. I forced myself to step backward until my shoulders brushed the wall, the north wall, the one that now held the door that should have been west. My fingertips traced the plaster, warm, as though someone had pressed their palms there not long before. "Hello," I asked softly. The house answered with a faint creak. Not the settling of old timber, but the sound of weight shifting on a floorboard somewhere deeper inside. I raised my torch and swept the beam along the hallway. The wallpaper seemed different. Patterns I didn't remember, Faded shapes of vines and small flowers writhed subtly in the trembling light. Shadows pooled thickly in corners that should have been too narrow to hold darkness. Another creak. Closer. I stepped forward cautiously. The floor felt uneven beneath my feet. Boards lifted slightly with each step, as if rearranged in a hurry. The house smelled faintly of dust and rain-soaked wood, but underneath it lingered a strange, warm, scent-like breath caught between close walls. I whispered again, "Is anyone here?" No voice responded, but down the corridor, one of the new doors eased open with a sigh. Only 2 inches, just enough to suggest an invitation or a warning. I held my breath. The darkness inside the room wasn't still, it shifted, pulling inward like fabric being drawn by unseen fingers. I took 1 step closer, and the door opened another inch, as though reacting to my movement. The air around me tightened. A soft scratching rose from inside the room, like nails brushing wood. Slow, steady, directional, not frantic, not trapped, purposeful. I swallowed and reached out a trembling hand toward the doorframe. Before I touched it, the scratching stopped. Silence pressed inward, thick and expectant. I lifted my torch. The beam landed on something at floor level, something small and pale, resting just inside the doorway. A floor tile, perfectly square, perfectly clean, and not from this room at all. I knew because it matched the missing tile from the hall where I'd woken this morning, a loose tile I'd made a mental note to tell the owner about. Someone, or something, had carried it here, as if the house were moving pieces of itself around while I slept. My throat tightened. A low click echoed behind me. I turned sharply. The front door, the one that had moved to the north wall, was gone again. Not moved. Gone. Smooth plaster filled the space where it had been seconds ago, as though the house had inhaled and pulled the exit into its lungs. I spun back to the open doorway. The scratching resumed. Faster now. More eager, and a whisper rose from the darkness inside, almost apologetic. It's still looking for the right place to let you out it. The scratching inside the doorway deepened longer strokes now, as though whatever was in there had turned its attention fully toward me. Not hostile, not frantic, deliberate. I stepped back, pulse shaking in my throat. The loose floor tile at the threshold seemed to vibrate, nudged by the faint tremors radiating from inside the room. Then the house shifted. A slow, rolling groan traveled through the walls, floorboards flexing beneath my feet. I grabbed the railing beside me, except the railing wasn't beside me anymore. My hand closed on empty air. The corridor had stretched, not by much, just a few inches, enough to unsettle the eye, to alter proportions in ways my brain wasn't built to track. Another groan, a soft thud behind the plaster, like something big had rolled over inside the walls. The door I'd been watching, the one cracked open to reveal the scratching, eased open another inch. That same quiet invitation. I forced myself to speak. My voice sounded small. Show yourself. What answered wasn't a voice, but a knock. One sharp tap on the floorboards, directly behind me. I spun around. Nothing there. Just the dim corridor. Now a little longer, a little narrower. The pattern on the wallpaper shifting like vines, deciding which way to grow. Another knock, this time at the far end of the hall, followed by a third. Above me, on the ceiling, soft, curious taps spreading outward like a ripple, passing from room to room. floor to ceiling, wall to wall, as though the house were locating me by sound. The tapping converged again, this time from inside the open room. I lifted the torch. The beam landed on something new. A pair of footprints had appeared on the dusty floorboards inside the doorway there, human-shaped and facing outward toward me. Not prints left earlier, not smudges. Fresh, I watched in disbelief as the dust around each print quivered, then parted, as though the floor itself were remembering the weight of someone standing there a moment before. Then the prints shifted, forward, half an inch, just enough to see. Something in that room had taken a step toward me. I stepped back so quickly I nearly fell. The house responded instantly. A loud clunk echoed through the hallway deep, structural like a massive bolt sliding into place. The floor under my boots tilted slightly, correcting itself, then tilting again, as though aligning for a purpose. The door frames along the corridor began to change height, some rising taller, some sinking lower, some narrowing until they were barely slits. The lights flickered, but I hadn't turned any lights on. I hadn't found a switch since I arrived. Yet the hallway brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again. Not through electricity, through breathing. The walls inhaled subtly, expanding, exhaled, dimming, a deep, slow rhythm, like a creature settling into wakefulness. The scratching inside the room stopped. Silence thickened. Then, footsteps. Bare, soft, unmistakably human footsteps began pacing inside the room. And step, tarry step, step, pausing, turning, starting again. They weren't hesitant or lost. They were searching. Then, the footsteps stopped exactly at the threshold, behind the door, inches from me. I raised the torch, heart in my teeth. The door creaked open the final inch, enough to reveal nothing, just darkness. But something waited there. I felt the pressure of it, the attention, the strange warmth on the threshold like breath pressing outward. The floor beneath me shifted again, boards sliding under my boots, rearranging grain by grain. The footprints inside the room shifted too. Another half step forward. The house exhaled deeply, and the whisper came, not from the room, but from the floorboards beneath me. Don't run by. It'll make the rooms scatter. A violent shudder coursed through the hallway. Doors slammed shut in a chain reaction. Lights flickered. The wallpaper twisted. Something sprinted overhead, dragging nails across the ceiling. Then the house inhaled again. A slow, heavy intake, and every door on the corridor swung open at once, revealing nothing but identical, yawning darkness, except for one room, the one with the footprints. Its doorway glowed faintly with warm, yellow light, inviting, almost safe. The whisper came again, closer now. Choose quickly. It can't hold still for long. And the house waited to see which door I'd dare step into. The corridor swayed barely, but enough that I had to widen my stance just to stay upright. The open door with the footprints glowed softly, its warm yellow light pushing against the hallway's shifting darkness like a fragile lantern in a storm. Every other doorway yawned open into identical blackness. Rooms that hadn't been there hours ago. Rooms that would not be there a moment later. The whisper urged again. Quickly, I stepped closer to the lit room, drawn and afraid in equal measure. The footprints on the threshold remained still. toes pointed outward, as if waiting for my approach, as if their owner had stepped back only seconds before, holding the door for me. My fingers brushed the edge of the frame. The light flickered, and the footprints shifted again, a subtle scrape, dust rising in a soft halo around them. They stepped backward into the room. Someone, or something, was moving inside, matching its pace to mine, keeping just ahead of my sight. I swallowed hard. Show yourself. The footsteps paused. The house reacted instead. A ripple went through the wallpaper, a silent shudder, and the pattern of vines and flowers reoriented themselves toward me, watching, listening, waiting. I stepped into the room. The air changed instantly warmer, heavier, almost humid. The soft yellow glow came from a single lamp sitting on a crooked wooden table. Its shade was frayed, its bulb too dim to fill the far corners. The footprints ended just beyond the threshold. No others led deeper, but I wasn't alone. Something shifted behind the wall to my left, the unmistakable weight of a body turning over in a narrow space. I spun toward the sound. The wall bulged slightly, then settled. The plaster pressed outward in a slow rise and fall, exactly like the rhythm of breathing. I stepped back, pulse hammering. The house inhaled with me, and a faint groan traveled through its beams. I forced my voice out, low and steady. What do you want? A soft knock answered from inside the wall. One, then two, then a third. But the third echoed not from the wall, but from behind me. I whipped around. The door was closing, not slamming, sliding, as though pushed by a careful hand. I lunged for it, catching the edge just before it latched shut. The wood vibrated under my grip, warm, like skin heated by a fever. A voice whispered on the other side of the door, muffled and unsteady. Don't stay in one room too long. Before I could answer, something else pressed against the other side of the frame. A second set of fingers, cold, thin, gripping the door from within the room. Not mine, not the whisperer's. These fingers belonged to the house. The door pulled sharply inward. I stumbled back as it swung open again, and the hallway beyond was different. Shorter, crooked, with only 3 doors now, not 6. The house had rearranged itself the moment I stepped inside. The warm light behind me dimmed to a trembling flicker. I turned back to the room and froze. The footprints had changed. Where 2 prints had been, facing outward, now 4 prints faced inward. 2 additional ones, smaller, closer together, as though someone had stepped out from the plaster and stood beside the original figure. A soft exhale drifted from inside the wall. Not human, not animal. Like wood remembering how to breathe. The warm lamp sputtered. A shadow detached from the corner. I slow, reluctant, long-limbed and uneven. I stepped back into the hallway as the shadow unfurled, stretching upward, brushing the ceiling with arms that shouldn't have reached that far. The voice outside the room, the one who'd warned me earlier, whispered urgently, "Close it. Don't look at it. Close it now." I grabbed the door and slammed it shut, but the house reacted violently. The floor lurched sideways. Wallpaper peeled in long, twisting sheets. Doors down the hall slammed open and shut, like many mouths speaking at once. Inside the room, something struck the door from the other side. Once, twice, 3 times. Each blow slow, searching, as though testing the material rather than trying to break it. A breath of warm air slipped through the gap at the bottom of the frame and brushed across my ankle. Then the whisper I had feared most, from just beyond the wood, low, eager, curious, found you. The house shuddered. The farthest door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase twisting downward into darkness. And the whisper outside the room my unknown guide spoke again, sharper this time. Run. It knows your footsteps now. I ran, not because the whisper told me to, but because the house itself seemed to lean toward me, the walls contracting, the air thickening as if the whole structure were inhaling slowly, preparing to swallow. The staircase at the end of the corridor waited like a throat, narrow, no railing, steps uneven, some shallow, some too deep as if carved by different hands on different nights. I descended fast, boots thudding softly on wood that grew warmer with each step. The knocking from the closed room above faded, replaced by the house's restless, shifting, distant creaks, stretching beams, soft clicks behind the plaster. Halfway down, the staircase widened into a landing. It wasn't a basement. It was a sitting room, small, cozy, warm yellow wallpaper, an old sofa, a fireplace of rough stone with dying embers curled in the grate. The air smelled of burnt pine and something familiar, fresh bread, a faint sweetness I didn't expect here. My steps slowed. The house felt calmer, like a creature settling after barking. A soft glow lit the ceiling from a table lamp beside the sofa. On the coffee table lay a blanket neatly folded, a mug of tea steaming gently as if poured seconds ago. My heart hammered. Someone had been here, maybe still was, but the oppressive tension I'd felt upstairs lifted, thinning into a warm hush. The wallpaper didn't twist. The floorboards didn't breathe. The scent was comforting, not the stale dampness of the corridor, but something lived in, familiar. I whispered cautiously, "Hello." No whisper answered. No footsteps. Only the soft crackle of the low fire, and the gentle pop of a pine knot burning through. For a fragile moment, I let myself believe the danger might have passed. I moved toward the table, drawn by the steam rising from the mug. The tea smelled faintly of chamomile. Not malicious. Not strange. Normal. A calm washed over me slow. Heavy. Welcome. My legs grew light. The fire's glow flickered gently, hypnotically, like this room had been waiting, not to trap me, but to offer rest. I sat on the edge of the sofa. The cushions dipped as though someone recently stood up. That should have terrified me, but exhaustion pushed past instinct. I exhaled deeply. My heartbeat steadied. My hands stopped trembling. Maybe, just maybe, this part of the house wasn't haunted. Maybe it remembered being a home once. I leaned back, letting my shoulders sink into the worn upholstery. The warmth of the fireplace wrapped around me like a blanket. I closed my eyes just long enough to breathe, just long enough to feel safe. Then the whisper returned, soft as a breath on my ear. "Don't fall asleep." My eyes snapped open. The room had changed. Barely. Subtly. But changed. The lamp on the table was no longer crooked. It now tilted toward me, shade angled unnervingly low. Like an eye leaning closer, the fireplace embers crackled, but the flame cast no light on the opposite wall. And the mug of tea, the steam rose in a thin, straight line, unmoving, frozen midair. I stood abruptly. The warmth in the room thickened, turning heavy, wet, clinging to my skin like invisible hands pressing me gently down. The sofa cushion behind me indented, as though someone had just sat down, slowly, patiently, waiting for me to join them again. My breath hitched. I backed away. Every step I took, the cushion beside me deepened further. The shape of a thigh, then a knee, then the faint impression of a hand settling on the sofa's armrest. I stumbled toward the fireplace. My foot hit something beneath the rug, a lump. I pulled the rug back. A door lay flat beneath it. A trap door. Old brass ring, scratched by fingernails. The whisper came again. Not from behind me, not from beside me, but from under the trapdoor. It's the only way that stays the same. The sofa cushion behind me groaned as the unseen weight rose from it. Not slowly, not cautiously, purposefully. The room's warmth pressed in, suddenly suffocating. The door upstairs slammed open. Footsteps soft, bare, urgent began descending the crooked staircase. Multiple sets, from every door that had opened, converging, rushing. I grabbed the brass ring, pulled. The trapdoor resisted for a heartbeat. Then it flew upward as if pushed from below. Cold air surged out, clean, crisp, untouched by the house's breathing warmth. I stared into the darkness beneath. A narrow chute of stone, fixed, unmoving. A space the house couldn't warp. A safe place, or a deeper trap. The footsteps pounded onto the landing above me. Closer, closer. The sofa cushions expanded as the invisible figure stood. Warm hands brushed my back, guiding, not grabbing, and the whisper gentle, hurried, urged, "Please, go. It's almost here." I jumped. The trapdoor slammed shut overhead, and the house exhaled, disappointed, but not defeated, because deep below me, the chute opened into another corridor, long, silent, waiting, and in the dark ahead, I heard a faint, familiar sound. Footsteps, matching mine, in perfect rhythm. The chute narrowed as I slid down, stone brushing my shoulders, cold air slicing past my ears. My own breath echoed back at me, except every exhale returned half a second late, like the darkness was mimicking it, trying to learn it, trying to match it. My boots struck solid ground at last. I staggered, palms hitting cold stone. The air here was different, dry, still, untouched by the house's warmth. For a moment, I believed I'd escaped the parts of the house that moved. Then the footsteps resumed. The same steady rhythm I'd heard before, except now, they weren't above me. They weren't behind me. They were ahead, deeper in the corridor. Step, 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 perfectly aligned with mine. I froze. The corridor stretched forward, lit only by the faintest thread of light from cracks in the stone behind me. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the walls were carved, not with masonry marks, but with long, dragging scratches, vertical, horizontal, circular, like someone trying to navigate in the dark, clawing to find a way out. The footsteps ahead paused when I paused. I whispered, "Who are you?" My voice vanished into the stone. Then the footsteps started again, closer. I stepped back and hit something behind me. Not a wall, a warm surface, breathing faintly. I spun. Nothing was there, just empty air. Empty darkness. Empty corridor. But the stone behind me was warm. Warming further. Like the house's pulse had found me even here. A whisper brushed my ear too close. Too soft to be from any direction I could track. It followed you down now. I forced myself forward. Step by slow step. The corridor widened as I moved. Stone giving way to old wood. Beams supporting a ceiling that sagged like tired lungs. A faint glow emanated from somewhere ahead, not lamplight, not firelight, but a soft amber shimmer. As I reached it, the corridor opened into a massive, hidden atrium beneath the house. I stopped breathing. The ceiling here was made of wooden planks, each trembling with faint, rhythmic breaths. The walls pulsed like veins. Door frames, dozens lined the circular atrium, none matching any room I'd seen above. Each stood open a crack, releasing tiny sighs of warm air. And hanging in the center, suspended by ropes that moved slightly like muscles flexing, was a door, not attached to anything, not opening to any wall. A door without a house around it. It slowly turned in the stale air, its knob catching the amber light like an eye glinting. The footsteps, the ones that had matched mine, now echoed in all directions. Every door in the atrium whispered, "Chusa." My chest tightened. This wasn't relief. This was the house showing me the heart of its maze. I took a step toward the suspended door. Instantly, the corridor behind me sealed, planks sliding together like lips closing. The house inhaled, deep, slow, expectant. The suspended door rotated again, creaking. Behind it, something flickered, a corridor, or a stairwell, or another room entirely. It changed with each rotation, rearranging faster than my vision could catch. The whisper from earlier, the one that warned me in the sitting room, rose again, from everywhere and nowhere. "That one leads out." "Which one?" I whispered. "Tell me." The voice sighed, like someone leaning close behind my shoulder. "The one that doesn't move." I stared at the hanging door. It changed again, frame stretching, knob shifting to the other side, paneling twisting. It was always moving, not the one. I scanned the ring of door frames lining the atrium. Most pulsed with warm light, their thresholds flexing, floorboards rippling like shallow breaths. But one, a narrow door, crooked and unpainted, did not move. Its edges stayed perfectly still. Its threshold held firm. Even the dust before it didn't shift. I stepped toward it. The atrium reacted instantly. Every other door slammed wide open. A deafening crash of wood and breath and walls expanding violently. A rush of warm air blasted outward, pushing me back like a hand trying to shove me toward the moving door in the center. I dug my heels in and pushed against the pressure. The warm air thickened, grabbing my coat, sliding under my collar, pulling me like fingers around my ribs. The house whispered, panicked, "Wrong, wrong one, that's not." But I recognized the tone. Not warning, lying, trying to keep me here. I lunged for the still door. The house screamed. Not a sound. A full-body vibration that rattled every beam, every board, every breath of air. Dust rained from the trembling ceiling. The suspended door thrashed violently, ropes snapping one by one. I grabbed the knob. It was ice cold. The house's warmth recoiled. Hissing, I twisted hard. The door flew open, revealing nothing but darkness. No room, no corridor, just emptiness. My throat clenched. Where does it go? The whisper answered, weaker now. Away. Behind me, the atrium convulsed. The suspended door dropped. It crashed toward me like a falling guillotine. Every doorframe shuddered. Some warped into teeth. Some stretched into hands. Some flooded with thick, suffocating dark. The house bellowed. Don't leave. I jumped. Darkness swallowed me whole. Cold rushed around my face, my arms, my legs, an endless freefall. Then, my feet hit ground. Grass. Night air. Cold and real, filled with the smell of dew and open sky. I staggered forward, choking on relief. Behind me, the still door, now standing alone in the middle of the field, slammed shut. The house exhaled once more. Long, low, disappointed. Then its voice, faint as a fading dream, drifted through the crack beneath the door. I'll find where you fit next time. The door blinked like a single shutter of an enormous eye and vanished, leaving me alone in the empty night. But not alone for long, because behind me, in the grass, I heard footsteps, matching mine. For a moment I didn't move. The night was too quiet, too honest, after everything inside the shifting house. Wind rolled through the tall grass. Crickets chirped. The sky stretched wide and open above me like a mercy. Then the footsteps behind me matched mine again, perfectly, soft in the grass. A half-second delayed. I froze mid-step. The echo froze too, slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. I turned. No house, no door, nothing but the open field rolling down toward a tree line. But the grass behind me was flattened. A trail of pressed blades followed me exactly. Right foot, left foot, stride length identical, but no one had walked it. The night air thickened with a warmth that didn't belong outside. A whisper brushed the back of my neck. You stepped through the exit, but the house isn't finished with you. I spun again. Still nothing, but the grass in front of me parted, smoothly, silently, as though someone invisible was walking toward me. Every step it took, the ground trembled, a soft protest from soil that didn't want to hold weight. I staggered backward. Stay away from me. The invisible footsteps stopped, then rearranged, turning to face the same direction I faced, aligning beside mine, walking again, with me, not chasing, not stalking, following. A second whisper drifted in the wind, this one thinner, strained, almost wistful. Houses learn their guests. I backed away faster, stumbling. The warm presence followed, keeping perfect rhythm. The field around me flickered, not the sky, not the grass, reality. For one split second, I saw walls around me again, just frames, just outlines, like the house had blinked into place around my body before losing its grip. A doorframe flickered in the air ahead, gone the next second, back the next, closer now. The invisible footsteps stepped nearer until they were right behind me, breath warming my shoulder, and the final whisper, soft, patient, inevitable, slid into my ear. You can leave the house, but the house doesn't leave you. I ran. The field darkened, and with every desperate step, the warm presence followed, matching me, shaping itself, waiting for the night it would finally decide where I belong. Story 8. The bridge that crossed itself. I first heard the bridge before I ever saw it. A low, rhythmic groan carried through the fog. Wood bending, ropes straining, posts shifting under a weight that wasn't mine. I followed the sound down the ravine path until it opened onto a narrow suspension bridge stretching over a black, quiet river. Except the bridge wasn't still. It moved, not swaying from wind or age, but bending gently forward, plank by plank, as if it were walking. Each wooden slat lifted, pressed down again a little farther along, the whole structure inching across the river like a giant centipede made of rope and timber. I froze at the edge of the ravine. Nights out here never felt safe. But this was wrong. The bridge stopped moving the moment I stepped into view. Every rope went still. Every plank flattened, waiting. Fog curled around my ankles. A whisper rose from somewhere beyond the river, carried by the slow current. If you cross, don't look back. Then a single plank near my feet lifted, carefully, politely, as though the bridge were lowering itself into a bow, inviting me, expecting me, and the ropes strained again, like a creature holding its breath. The plank settled again as soon as I stepped closer. A soft wooden sigh, almost relieved. I crouched near it, running a cautious hand over the grain. Cold, damp from the fog. But beneath the surface I felt a faint, rhythmic vibration. Not the river, not the wind. A pulse. I jerked my hand back. The ropes trembled in response. Not from tension, but from anticipation, as though the bridge were reacting to my hesitation. The river below was silent, unmoving, its surface perfectly smooth, reflecting only the faint glow of the moon through the fog. Too smooth. I stepped onto the first plank. It sank slightly under my weight, not creaking, not protesting, just adjusting, like a muscle flexing to hold me. A second plank ahead lifted, an inch, 2 inches, then lowered again, perfectly timed with my next step. My throat tightened. Stop, I whispered instinctively. The bridge obeyed instantly. Every rope stilled. Every plank froze. The fog settled, almost respectful. I took another step back, but the plank behind me rose sharply, cutting off my retreat like a raised heel threatening to snap shut. Okay, I murmured, voice shaking. Okay, I won't go that way. The plank lowered. The river under the bridge stirred for the first time, a single ripple sweeping outward, as though something beneath the surface had turned over in its sleep. A faint metallic smell rose with the ripple, then faded. That whisper returned distant but clearer now, drifting from the far end of the bridge. Don't look back. I spun toward the sound, but fog swallowed everything beyond 10 meters. The path behind me was already gone, eaten by the thick mist. It felt like I'd stepped into a pocket of time the world had forgotten. A soft thump rose from deep within the bridge's structure. Then another, and another. A slow, steady sequence of knocks traveling beneath my feet, moving along the planks toward the far side, as if something were walking under the bridge, inside its ribs, or telling me to follow. I forced myself forward. Planks lifted and lowered like controlled breaths. The ropes tightened in waves, guiding my balance. Not dangerous, intentional. Halfway across, the fog thickened again, swirling around my legs like hands trying to slow me down. I brushed at it uselessly. That's when I noticed the sound, a faint tapping behind me, rhythmic, delicate, like bare feet walking on wood. I froze. The tapping stopped too. My pulse slammed in my ears. The warning echoed again, closer now, threaded through the fog like a voice whispering inside my own breath. If you look back, it will follow you home. The plank under my foot vibrated with a gentle tremor, nudging me forward like a parent urging a child across a threshold. The ropes creaked softly, not with strain, but with patience, waiting for my next step. The fog thickened into a wall soft, wet, almost velvet against my skin. Every breath tasted like damp rope and river silt. The plank beneath me throbbed again, a gentle, coaxing pulse pulling me forward. But behind me, the tapping resumed. Not footsteps this time. Fingers, light, precise, running along the planks in a steady rhythm, like someone playing the bridge as an instrument. Tap, 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 tap. The pattern repeated, then shifted. A private melody played just for me. My throat tightened. Stop, I whispered. The tapping continued, unbothered, unrushed, but the bridge itself obeyed. The ropes on either side pulled taut, stopping their subtle forward lean. The planks went still, as if the entire structure held its breath. Only the tapping behind me kept going. Closer now, so close I could almost feel the faint vibration through the wood beneath my heels. I stepped forward. The bridge exhaled, resuming its unnatural motion. Ropes swayed gently. Planks lifted ahead and lowered behind, like a creature adjusting its spine. But the tapping behind me adjusted too, matching my pace perfectly. When I sped up, the tapping quickened. When I hesitated, it paused, not copying, shadowing, accompanying. The fog curled tighter around my legs. I brushed at it and felt resistance, as if the fog itself had weight. A low kriak drifted from the ropes overhead. Then a deeper groan rose from inside the bridge's belly. Not wood bending, not water shifting. Something moving, something big, something waking. I swallowed hard and pressed on. Halfway across, the bridge dipped sharply to the right. I flung my arms out, gripping a rope. It felt like holding a muscle warm, tense, alive. The tapping behind me stumbled, skipped, then resumed even faster. As though annoyed, a soft whisper drifted past my ear, not carried by wind, but by the bridge itself, traveling through the ropes and into my bones. Keep your eyes forward. I froze. The whisper wasn't from the far side of the river this time. It came from directly beneath my feet. A loud thud shook the entire bridge. The planks rolled under me like a wave. I dropped to one knee to steady myself. Another thud. Closer. Stronger. The river below rippled. Just once, and then stilled again. Something was rising against the underside of the bridge. The tapping behind me faltered. The rhythm broke entirely. Whoever or whatever had been following me suddenly retreated a few steps. Afraid. The bridge's ropes shuddered violently. Fog peeled apart in jagged streaks as the wood beneath me strained, bulging upward in the shape of something pushing up from below. I crawled to my feet and forced myself to keep walking. The planks ahead lifted to meet my step, steady and loyal. But the bulge beneath the bridge followed me, keeping pace, pushing higher each time. Thud, thud, thud. The entire span trembled. The tapping behind me had stopped completely. I swallowed and whispered, "What are you?" A voice rose from beneath the planks, a low, drowned murmur bubbling up through soaked timber. "Not what you fear, only what waits." My stomach clenched. I took another step. The plank supporting my weight pulsed. Once, twice, like a heartbeat syncing with mine. Then the whisper came again, clearer now. "Don't run, Paris. It will rise faster." The bulge beneath the bridge heaved violently. For a moment I thought the entire structure would split open. I stumbled forward, nearly falling. The rope snapped taut like tendons. The fog rushed past my face, as though exhaled by something massive. Then, behind me, the tapping returned. Aggressive, panicked, not rhythmic anymore. Tuck, 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 tuck. Something was running toward me. Fast, I broke into a sprint. The bridge responded instantly, planks rising beneath my feet, helping me forward, ropes swaying in a coordinated rhythm to steady me. But whatever chased me was faster, breathless tapping, then scraping, then outright pounding, closing in, matching my stride, doubling it. The bulge beneath the bridge surged, slamming upward again. I screamed. The plank ahead of me lifted high, almost like a shield. The planks behind me flattened sharply, slapping shut like a trapdoor. The tapping stopped instantly, cut off. Silence swallowed the bridge. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran until the ropes sang with tension, until the fog thinned just enough for me to see the vague shape of the far end of the bridge materializing. Almost there. Almost. Then the voice from beneath the bridge rose again, no longer a whisper. "Don't look back, no matter what crosses behind you." Something huge rose in the fog at my back, a shifting, climbing silhouette scraping across wood and rope. The bridge hissed under the weight, and I ran, lungs burning, as the river exploded into motion beneath us. The closer I got to the far end of the bridge, the more violently it moved, not collapsing, not failing, changing, as if bracing itself for whatever clawed its way up behind me. The fog churned into a thick wall. I couldn't see the river anymore, only the bridge and the thing rising from beneath it. Wood cracked, rope snapped. A massive weight pressed upward, warping the planks so sharply that each step felt like running across the spine of something alive. The voice under the bridge, the one that had warned me, vanished, replaced by a new sound. A groaning, wet drag, claws sliding over damp wood. Not tapping, not footsteps, a crawl. Slow at first, then faster, much faster. I ran harder, lungs tearing. The fog parted enough for a glimpse of the far end, the faint outline of solid earth, a small lantern hanging crooked on a post. But the bridge bucked under my feet. A plank snapped upward like a hinge, nearly launching me sideways. Something behind me gripped the bridge, A weight so massive, it drove the whole structure downward. The ropes screamed. A shadow lunged through the fog. Long, low, twisted by movement and mist. I didn't look back, but I felt its presence condense the air. The bridge tightened beneath me, planks rising to shield my heels as I ran. Then, a voice, not whispered, not drowned, right behind my ear. Don't run from me. A cold, slick touch grazed the back of my ankle. I kicked instinctively. My boot hit something soft and wet, and a guttural hiss tore through the fog. The bridge reacted instantly. The plank under me snapped upward in a violent jerk, launching me forward. I hit the next plank hard, rolled, scrambled back to my feet. The ropes convulsed. The entire structure lurched, swinging like a pendulum over the unseen water below. A roar split the air. Not animal, not human, a kind of throaty, gurgling fury vibrating through the bridge's bones. My fingers brushed the rope railing. Warm, alive. Help me. I choked out. The bridge answered. The planks under my feet lifted in a rapid sequence, one after another, a rising wave pushing me toward the far end faster than I could run. Behind me, the creature, whatever had climbed out of the river, slammed its weight onto the bridge. I risked a single glance over my shoulder, not enough to break the warning, just enough to see the silhouette. Wrong choice. I saw pieces, just pieces, a long, bent limb crawling sideways across the ropes, hands too many gripping the planks like wet branches, a head dangling at an impossible angle, hair dripping the same black water that ran beneath the bridge, and eyes, 2, 4. They glowed dimly through the fog, a soft amber light, like the lantern at the far end reflected in something hungry. I snapped my gaze forward. The bridge screamed under the creature's weight, ropes snapping like tendons splitting. The planks carrying me surged upward one last time, launching me toward the lantern post ahead. My hands slammed into dirt, real ground. I rolled, coughing, pulling myself onto solid earth. The bridge shuddered violently behind me. Something huge slammed into the threshold. Claws scraped the wood. The ropes strained to breaking. I crawled backward until my spine hit the trunk of a twisted riverside tree. Fog swallowed the bridge again. I saw nothing, only heard it. The creature's slow, wet breathing. The planks bending under its shifting limbs, the ropes tightening like a noose. Then the voice under the bridge, the one that had warned me, returned at last, trembling. Don't look. A heavier thud. Closer. The fog trembled. The creature was almost at the edge. My breath locked in my chest. The lantern flickered. The rope railing nearest me snapped, not broken, pushed apart from within, as something forced its way through. I squeezed my eyes shut. The creature exhaled, cold air sliding across my skin like a tide. You made it across. Its breath hovered at my cheek. But I haven't, Marcus. The fog behind me shifted. The tree bark pressed sharply into my spine as something leaned its full weight against the other side of the trunk, inches from me. The whisper slid through the air again, low, patient, and terrifyingly close. One of us still has to cross, and the first wet fingertip tapped the earth beside my shoe. Tap. The fingertip tapping the ground beside my shoe froze me entirely. Cold, slick, with a faint give to it. like pressing into waterlogged skin. But it didn't grab me. It simply rested there, waiting. My lungs burned from holding my breath. I forced a shallow inhale. The fog shifted. A breeze real, natural, crisp moved through suddenly, sweeping across my face. It cut through the humidity and the river stench clinging to me. The creature's breath vanished. The weight against the far side of the tree lifted. Silence settled, real silence. The kind I hadn't heard since stepping onto the bridge. I cracked one eye open. The riverside clearing was empty. No figure crouched beside me. No claws slipping through fog. No amber eyes peering from the shadows. Only the battered bridge stretching behind me, swaying gently like any worn wooden span would after a storm. The lantern on the post flickered softly, its flame steadying. Normal. Entirely normal. My muscles sagged with shaking relief, sinking into the dirt below me. I laughed once broken, breathless. "I'm out," I whispered. I made it, for the first time all night. Nothing answered. The fog continued thinning, revealing more of the riverbank. Rocks, tall grass, the faint shape of the path leading into the tree line beyond. A way home. I pushed myself up, legs trembling but steadying with each step. The ground felt solid, unmoving. The air tasted like cold pine and distant rain. Everything dangerous was behind me now. I walked toward the path. Each step grew easier. The bridge creaked softly behind me. Nothing unusual. Just cooling wood returning to its resting shape. I reached the first stand of trees and finally allowed myself to look back. The bridge hung still. No rising bulges beneath. No shifting planks. No tapping footsteps. Just rope, wood, fog. I exhaled again long, shaking my lungs, loosening for the first time since I stepped onto it. "I'm safe," I murmured to the empty forest. Whatever that thing was, it stayed on the other side. The lantern flickered behind me. Once, twice, then steadied. I turned to continue down the forest path, but something tugged at the corner of my vision. A soft ripple in the river. Subtle, almost delicate. Something dark drifted just beneath the surface, moving slowly, drifting with the current. A log, a shadow. No, it was hair. Long strands floating just beneath the water. Following the current's gentle pull, a pale forehead surfaced briefly, then dipped back under. I stumbled backward, heart jolting. No, you can't be here. The river surface smoothed instantly, as if tucking away whatever I had seen. A breeze rustled the treetops overhead. Natural, harmless. I stood there, grip tightening around a branch beside me, struggling to anchor myself. Then, tap, a soft sound behind me. At my heel, I spun. Nothing was there. Only the path, the grass, the faint rustle of wind. But my heartbeat stumbled, because the tap hadn't sounded like twig or stone. It sounded like knuckle on wood, like something testing its weight on the ground behind me. The trees around me felt suddenly too quiet. I backed away slowly, moving deeper into the forest, away from the river, away from the bridge. Another breeze passed through, carrying the distant roar of water hitting rocks. Relief softened my shoulders again. Nothing followed. Nothing moved. I reached a clearing, a bright, moonlit space where the fog couldn't reach, where the air felt untouched by the river's damp breath. I sat on a fallen log, letting my pulse slow. Safe, finally safe. But when I reached down to brush dirt from my pant leg, my fingers touched something cold. Wet, I lifted my hand. A faint, perfect circle of moisture marked the fabric, as though a fingertip had pressed there not long ago. And from the tree line behind me came a soft, rhythmic sound. Tap, 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 tap. The same pattern the bridge had learned, but now it moved through dry leaves, through branches, through earth, following me, trying out the forest floor the way it had tried out the wooden planks, slowly learning how to walk here. A whisper drifted between the trees, gentle, almost admiring. You ran well, bed. My breath froze. Your ground holds you better than mine. Leaves shifted as something stepped into the clearing. Not close, not rushing, just arriving. And then the final whisper, teach me how to cross. The clearing held its breath. Moonlight pooled in the grass like spilled silver, and every tree around me leaned just slightly inward, as if listening, waiting. The tapping stopped, not because whatever followed me had gone still, but because it had learned something. Dry leaves rustled on the far edge of the clearing, not from wind, not from an animal, but from weight. A careful, testing step, then another. I backed away slowly, palms slick with sweat. My voice shook. You're not supposed to leave the bridge. A low, almost curious sigh drifted between the trunks. The bridge moves. Why wouldn't I? The silhouette emerged from the shadows. At first I thought it was human. A tall, lean shape. Limbs long, but proportional. Posture hunched as if unused to standing upright. But as it stepped deeper into the clearing, the truth glimmered in broken pieces under the moon. Skin slick with river water from the knees down. Fingers too thin. Joints bending with liquid softness. Hair hanging in algae-tangled strands that dripped steadily onto the leaves. And its feet were not feet. The imprint they left behind was the shape of planks. Long, narrow, grooved with wood grain. It had not learned how to walk across earth. Earth had learned how to hold it. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the fallen log. The creature took another slow step forward, and the ground beneath it flattened, dry leaves gliding aside as though making space. I realized with a sick twist in my stomach, the forest was cooperating with it, just as the bridge had. Stop, I said, but my voice barely reached it. It tilted its head. The gesture was human, almost gentle. You run better than the others that. My blood went cold. What others? It lifted an arm, and I saw long scratches down its forearm, parallel lines like rope burns. Old, deep, the ones who crossed before you were. I shook my head. I didn't cross. The bridge carried me. Yes, it whispered, because you listened. Footsteps echoed behind me. I spun. The woods were empty, but the sound wasn't footsteps. It was planks. Soft wooden lifts and drops, like a miniature bridge walking through the canopy above me. Unseen. Branches overhead swayed with deliberate rhythm. One tree creaking, then another, like a line of tall wooden posts shifting their weight. I realized the truth too late. The bridge hadn't been following me. The idea of the bridge had. Every tree trunk, every branch, every piece of wood in the forest. All of it was learning to move like the bridge. All of it was learning to cross. Panic exploded through me. I turned and ran. Leaves tore under my boots as I sprinted across the clearing. Lungs burning, heart slamming against bone. The creature moved behind me, not fast, not lunging, but steadily, confidently, like it knew every route I'd try to take. The tapping resumed, now far ahead of me, now to my left, now behind, as though the forest were full of it, as though it was no longer a single creature, but a dozen echoes of the same thing trailing through wooden veins. I crashed into the tree line opposite the river, branches clawing my face, roots grabbing my ankles. I dug my hands into the earth, dragging myself through brambles and damp undergrowth. Something heavy shifted in the branches above, then dropped. A plank, a solid, polished piece of wood, impossibly out of place, slammed into the earth inches from my hand. It twitched, once, then slid toward me like it had been commanded. I flung myself sideways, scrambling wildly until I burst into another clearing, this one shallow, littered with moss and old stones. Moonlight washed over something on the ground, a broken lantern, just like the one hanging at the far end of the bridge. The glass was cracked, its wick soaked, its frame dented. But when I touched it, the metal was warm. The bridge had been here before. A sharp crack echoed behind me. I twisted around. The creature stepped into the clearing, but now it wasn't alone. Tree trunks shifted behind it, their bark tightening like clenched fists. Thin roots curled upward, weaving into long, finger-like shapes. Branches creaked overhead, mimicking the rising and lowering rhythm of planks. The forest was forming the bridge around me, building it, extending it. "Please," the creature whispered, voice almost tender. "Teach me how to walk where you walk." "I can't," I rasped. "You can." It took one step forward, and the entire forest leaned with it. Roots arched upward to become suspension ropes. Branches bent downward to form slats. Leaves stripped away to reveal pale underwood. The trees were turning themselves into a path, leading straight to me. I stumbled back, tripping on the broken lantern. Then I had an idea. Stupid, desperate, I grabbed the lantern and struck its metal base hard against a stone. Spark snapped. I struck it again and again. On the third strike, the old wick caught, a faint flame sputtering to life. The forest stopped moving. The creature froze, eyes widening. Wood creaked overhead, hesitant, afraid. "Stay back," I warned, holding the lantern out. The flame brightened, catching the wind, feeding on old oil. The creature hissed. No sign. "Stay. Back." The forest shuddered violently. Branches twisted away from the flame. Roots recoiled. The constructed wooden pathway collapsed mid-form. The creature stepped back, shielding its face, not from the heat, but from the light. Not that. Not again. Again. The word chilled me. What happened before? It didn't answer. Instead, the river roared in the distance. A sudden, furious surge. Water crashed through the trees like a living thing, swallowing underbrush, rising fast. The creature's shadow stretched, long and unnatural. "Don't let the light go out," it whispered. Then it melted backward into the fog. I didn't wait. I ran, through mud, through brambles, through clawing roots that recoiled only when the lantern swung too close. The river chased behind me, thundering, hungry. The forest reassembled itself, trees twisting to block my path, but the flame forced gaps, narrow and fleeting. I burst onto the old road at last, the trees thinning behind me. The lantern sputtered, then flared. For one breath, all the world stilled, and the river's roar stopped completely. I turned toward the forest. A vast silhouette stood just inside the tree line, tall, bent, limbs hanging like wet ropes, watching me, not crossing, not yet. The flame guttered, and the creature whispered from the darkness, "Next time, I will walk without a bridge." The lantern flickered out. I ran into the night as the tapping resumed behind me, soft, curious, learning, step by step. By the time I reached the old road's fork, my lungs were raw and my legs trembled with every step. The trees ahead opened into pastureland, wide, empty, safe, or so I thought. The night breeze cooled the sweat on my skin. My heartbeat steadied. The world felt real again, solid, unmoving. No shifting planks beneath my feet. No breathing fog. No tapping. I allowed myself to slow down. The silence was almost comforting. Almost. My boots crushed a patch of gravel with a crisp crunch. And from somewhere behind me, a second crunch answered, perfectly mirrored, perfectly timed. I froze. "Stay away," I whispered. The wind carried my voice across the fields, swallowing it in the dark. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, a lantern glowed to life in the tree line behind me. Not mine. This one burned with a soft amber flame, the exact color of the light pulsing through the bridge's ropes. It hovered at shoulder height, swaying gently left and right, as if carried, as if learning how to be carried. My breath hitched. Another crunch of gravel closer this time, and then a voice drifted through the dark, quiet and tired, as if rehearsing human speech one word at a time. "I can cross anything you can. You showed me how." I staggered back, eyes locked on the lantern. It flickered, then shifted upward, as though being lifted by a hand too long, too jointless. The flame brightened, and the silhouette behind it finally stepped into view, tall, bent, dripping softly onto the gravel road, each drop landing with a wooden tap. Not water, not blood, sap, like a newborn tree, learning to walk. The creature raised the lantern higher, illuminating its own twisted features, and its voice slid through the dark again, quieter, almost grateful. No bridge needed anymore. Then it took a step onto open ground, and the earth beneath its foot flattened itself to meet it. Story 9. The clock that waited for midnight twice. I inherited the old clock from an uncle I barely remembered. A tall grandfather clock with a black pendulum and no maker's name carved anywhere on the case. The kind of heirloom families supposedly treasure, though mine had apparently spent 30 years locked in an attic. The first night I brought it home, it refused to tick. I wound it carefully, adjusted the hands, checked the weights. Nothing. But at 11:59 p.m., as I sat alone in my living room, the clock gave a soft, careful click, then another, then the pendulum began to swing, smooth and deliberate, as though someone inside had given it a gentle push. I stood slowly, Before I could check the time, the clock chimed once. Midnight. But the hands still read 11:59. Then the chime sounded again, and again. 12 chimes. For a midnight that hadn't happened yet. The pendulum swung faster. The clock's door, the sealed wooden panel over the pendulum, eased open a fraction of an inch, just enough for a cold breath of air to drift out, and a whisper followed it. Don't let it reach midnight twice. The whisper dissolved into the dark as quickly as it came, leaving only the echo of the final chime trembling through the wooden case. I stared at the narrow slit in the pendulum door, expecting a draft, a settling creak, anything to excuse what I'd just heard. Instead, the pendulum slowed, not gradually, but in segments, as though its motion were being interrupted by invisible hands catching and releasing it. Swing, pause, swing, pause. I stepped closer. The hands on the clock had not moved at all, still stuck at 11:59, the minute hand hovering a hair's distance from midnight. But the chimes had finished, all 12, a full cycle of midnight, with no actual midnight. I lifted the pendulum door. The cold air brushing my fingers was unmistakable, not a room's chill, but the hollow cold of a cellar long sealed, air that had not touched daylight in years. Inside, the pendulum swayed more weakly now, its metal surface matte, not polished, and its weight shaped oddly, not the usual disc, but elongated, like a teardrop weighted at the bottom. Scratches covered the wooden backboard, shallow, some straight, some curved, none matching the old grain patterns, as though someone had dragged something sharp inside the case, again and again, trying to leave a message or a map. A soft ticking resumed, but not from the clock. From behind me, I turned sharply. Nothing in the room moved. No lights flickered. No shadows shifted. But the ticking continued, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway leading to my bedroom. Tick, tick, tick. I raised my voice slightly. Hello. The ticking stopped. The house returned to silence. Another breath of cold air drifted from the clock. Only this time, it carried a faint smell. Not rot, not dust, candle smoke, old candle smoke. I swallowed hard and leaned in to examine the pendulum more closely. My breath fogged against the glass. Fogged. The air inside the case was colder than the room itself by several degrees. But before I could process that, the minute hand clicked. A single, delicate jump forward. Barely half a millimeter, but enough to shift the alignment. Enough to bring the hand directly over the 12. Midnight. A second midnight. But the clock didn't chime this time. Instead, something inside the wooden case answered with a faint tap, like a knuckle brushing the interior. Then a second tap, slow, measured, matching the exact rhythm of the footsteps I thought I'd heard in the hallway. I backed away, heart pounding. The whisper returned, but not from the pendulum door this time. It came from behind the clock case, from the narrow gap where wood met wall. So close I felt the breath of it on my skin. You're letting it count. And the pendulum, still swaying weakly, struck the case with a soft metallic clink, a sound that shouldn't exist in any normal clock. A 13th sound, a number the clock had no reason to reach. The 13th sound hung in the air far longer than it should have. Metallic, thin, almost embarrassed to exist, as if even the clock wasn't sure it had produced it. The pendulum stilled, completely pinned in place mid-swing, frozen like an insect trapped in amber. I stepped back until my calves hit the sofa. Silence settled, dense and uneven. Then, from deep within the wooden case, a faint scraping began. Not the ticking of gears, not the swing of a pendulum, a slow, deliberate drag of something hard along the wood. Up, then down, then up again. I leaned in despite every instinct screaming against it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The marks inside the case deepened visibly, gouges widening as though carved from the inside at that very moment. I snapped the pendulum door shut. Instantly, the scraping stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The house held its breath with me. Then, the ticking resumed. Not from the hallway this time. From every direction. Behind me. Above me. Inside the walls. Tick. Tick. Tick, tick, tick. 1,000 tiny clocks embedded in plaster and wood, all waking at once. I covered my ears, but the sound only grew louder. A sharp, dry percussion, pulsing in jagged bursts like an arrhythmic heartbeat. I stumbled backward, clutching at the sofa arm. The grandfather clock responded. The minute hand twitched. Once, twice, a third time, jerking backward this time, against the mechanism, against every law of clockwork. It landed halfway between 11:59 and midnight. Neither time, both times, a non-time, a space it wasn't meant to inhabit. The ticking inside the walls stopped in perfect unison. Then the house answered with a deeper sound. Talk. Loud. Hollow. So heavy it vibrated the floorboards. The grandfather clock didn't move. Didn't chime. Didn't tick. The house had. Another talk. Lower this time. Rattling picture frames. Humming through the ceiling beams. It was imitating the clock. Trying to match it. Trying to join it. I forced myself to step forward again and gripped the clock's frame. Its wood was ice cold now, colder than before. My fingers stuck to it briefly, as though the surface had frosted. The pendulum door quivered, as though something behind it had pressed its forehead gently against the wood. A soft tap sounded behind the door. Then the faintest whisper, muffled by centuries of varnish. Open it. I staggered back. No. The whisper sharpened, becoming two-toned. A double voice, like two mouths speaking through one throat. Open it. Don't make us knock again. I backed away until I reached the hallway entrance. Silence returned. Then a new sound, far worse than tapping. Footsteps. Soft. Bare. Unmistakably human footsteps. Coming from upstairs. Slow. Measured. Descending the stairwell. Except I lived alone. I remained frozen in place as the steps approached the bottom stair. Then stopped. Something stood just beyond the hallway corner. Hidden from view. Breathing. Not loud, but slow and deep. Like someone steadying themselves. Then the voice came again. But this time, from the stairwell. It's already too late for once. A second voice. The same voice. Answered from inside the clock case. But not too late for twice why. The pendulum started swinging again. Hard. Violent. Cracking against the wooden sides of the case with each pass. A countdown. A warning. Or a beating fist. I forced myself forward and grabbed the pendulum door. It thrashed under my hand like an animal trying to escape. The footsteps in the hallway moved forward one step. Wood groaned. The pendulum slammed harder. Another step. The entire house hummed with ticking. Another step. The minute hand jerked toward midnight again. Just as the footsteps reached the doorway, the whisper drifted from every corner of the room at once. Don't let it reach the second 12 hour. And the clock began to chime. Not 12 this time, but one. One chime. For a second midnight that hadn't arrived yet. The thing in the hallway exhaled, and the second chime began to form in the clock's throat. The second chime swelled inside the clock, not ringing yet, but gathering itself, like a breath before a scream. I pressed both hands against the pendulum door. The wood shook beneath my palms, cold as stone, trembling with the violence of the trapped pendulum inside. From the hallway, the unseen figure took another slow step, bare feet on old wood, a deliberate shift of weight, patient as a predator that has already chosen the moment it will touch you. The second chime thickened and thickened, a low metallic hum filling the room like rising fog. No, I whispered, pushing harder on the door. Not again. You're not striking twice. The pendulum slammed the inside of the case. Once, twice, 3 times, like a fist pounding to be freed. And then, the hallway figure breathed in, deep, long, slow, the sound of someone filling their lungs with time itself. The temperature dropped so fast the hair on my arms rose. My breath fogged in front of me. The glass on the clock face frosted over and thin, branching patterns. Don't. The word broke in my throat. The second chime began. A soft metal whine, the hum rising, the gears shifting. As it grew louder, something strange happened. The room around me dimmed, as if the light itself were being pulled toward the clock. Shadows lengthened, corners deepened. The ticking inside the walls quieted in fear, and the figure in the hallway finally stepped into view. Only its legs appeared at first. Bare feet, angled slightly inward. Wrong. Still swollen with the fog of midnight that hadn't happened yet. Then its hands, thin, long-fingered hands, slid around the frame of the doorway, one on each side, as if it were gently, lovingly preparing to turn the corner. The second chime rose higher. The figure leaned forward, but where its face should have been, there was only darkness, not shadow, not void. An empty clock face, a smooth, circular disc of black where features should have been engraved. The hands missing, the numbers erased, a face with time stripped away. I stumbled backward. The pendulum door shook violently under my grip. The faceless thing tilted its head toward me, as if listening. When it spoke, its voice came from its throat, but echoed in the wood of the room, as if the air itself were repeating it for me. You're holding the wrong door. My hands slipped. The pendulum door cracked open an inch. Cold air rushed out like a gasp. The second chime almost hit. I threw my weight forward, slamming the door shut again. The thing in the hallway flinched. A small, irritated twitch, like someone being forced to wait. Its voice deepened. Let it out. You're only delaying the hour. I gritted my teeth. Stay away from me. The thing reached one long arm toward me. It didn't walk. It didn't step. It lengthened, as if the space between us were water, and its arm could glide through it like ink spreading. The fingertips brushed the floorboards near my boots. The second chime swelled so loudly I felt it in my ribs. I shoved my shoulder against the pendulum door. The entire clock shifted, heavy and straining. The faceless thing whispered, 2 midnights. One door. Its arm bent upward, reaching for my knee. The pendulum slammed the case again, so hard the entire clock lurched forward. The second chime reached the edge of release. I screamed, shoved the clock backward with all my strength, and snapped the pendulum door fully shut. A ripple of force pulsed through the wood, a shock wave of cold. The second chime collapsed back into silence. The faceless thing recoiled as if struck, its fingers curling inward. The room brightened slightly. Shadows retreated. The air warmed by a breath. The thing straightened, head tilting with slow disdain. You can't stop the hour. You can only choose who stands in it. Then it stepped backward into the hall, not disappearing, not fleeing, waiting for the next chime, waiting for me to fail, waiting for midnight to come again. And from inside the clock, through the wood, barely audible, a whisper rose. Don't let it count a third time. The pendulum quivered. The hands trembled. The minute hand ticked backward, toward 11:59. Again, the minute hand slid fully back to 11:59, and the room exhaled, a soft loosening of air, as if the walls themselves unclenched. The faceless figure in the hallway didn't move. It simply stood, half-shadowed, half-formed, head tilted ever so slightly, listening to the clock's reset breath. The house returned to silence. A normal silence, almost peaceful. For a moment, I let myself believe the worst had passed, that slamming the pendulum door had bought me time, that the thing in the hallway was bound to the chimes, and could not act while the clock's second midnight was undone. I stepped back, rubbing my arms to push away the cold. The wooden floor no longer shook. The walls no longer ticked. The air lost its frost. Only the faint, familiar scent of candle smoke lingered. I whispered, "It's over, for now." The faceless figure tilted its head again. A small, curious movement, almost gentle. Then it stepped backward, melting into the hallway, its bare feet silent on the old floorboards. For the first time since the clock chimed, I felt alone again, truly alone. I waited, listened. Nothing. I approached the hallway, peering into the dark, empty. Still, door to my bedroom slightly ajar, just as I'd left it. I swallowed a shaky breath and returned to the clock. It looked harmless. A simple grandfather clock with a dark wood case, a brass face, a glass door that reflected only my tired expression. Nothing monstrous, nothing wrong. Even the scratches inside the pendulum chamber looked old, faded, like something I could rationalize later. I placed a hand on the clock's warm wooden frame. No frost, no trembling. The pendulum rested peacefully inside. Just an object, a relic, a piece of furniture from an uncle whose face I could barely remember. Exhaustion washed over me, sudden and heavy, like a warm wave pulling me backward. My legs weakened. I sank to the sofa. The quiet felt thick and safe, coating my skin like a soft blanket. My breathing steadied. My mind slowed. The room dimmed not with dread, but with the kind of stillness that invites sleep. I let my eyes half close. Just rest. Just a moment. Just enough to stop the shaking in my hands. In that drifting haze, a gentle ticking resumed. Soft, rhythmic, normal. I smiled weakly, almost laughed. A clock ticking. Imagine that. No scraping, no knocking. Just a steady, reliable tick. I let it lull me. Tick, tick, tick. My eyelids drooped. My breathing deepened. Then, a second ticking joined it. A little off rhythm, a little slower, a little too close. Tick, 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 tick-tow. I straightened slowly. The sound wasn't coming from the clock. It was coming from the coffee table. My pulse stuttered. I leaned forward and slid the table's drawer open. Empty. But the ticking remained, coming from beneath the table. I crouched, heart pounding, lifting the tablecloth edge, and saw it. A small, round pocket watch, blackened by age. Its glass cracked, its chain tangled like a cluster of thin bones. I had never seen it before. I had never owned one. I had no idea how it got into my living room. The watch hands spun wildly, ticks accelerating until they blurred together, then stopping instantly at 11:59. My breath thickened in my throat. No, not you too. The pocket watch clicked open by itself. Inside, a tiny engraving glinted at shallow scratches, barely legible, but unmistakable. Don't let him out. A second time, a wave of cold swept across the room. Behind me, the grandfather clock's pendulum gave a soft metallic tap. Once, though it had been still. Then a soft whisper drifted from the hallway. You left the wrong clock closed. The lights flickered. The grandfather clock chimed. 1. Soft, timid note. Not loud, not violent. Almost apologetic. And from behind the sofa, somewhere beneath the floorboards, the same slow, measured footsteps began to rise, as if someone had walked down into the walls earlier, and was now climbing back up. I stumbled away from the pocket watch, heart hammering, mind tearing itself apart trying to understand. If the grandfather clock wasn't the second midnight, then what had I reset? The pocket watch ticked once more, then stopped completely, just as the footsteps reached the underside of the living room floor, and the faceless voice whispered through the cracks. He's almost here. The footsteps beneath the floorboards grew heavier. Not quick, not frantic, but slow and patient, as though whoever walked there knew exactly where they were headed, and exactly how long it would take to reach me. Each step made the floor breathe upward, just slightly, a swelling of wood and air, as if the boards themselves were stretching their ribs. I backed away from the rising footsteps until my shoulders hit the far wall. The grandfather clock stood a few feet from me, its pendulum perfectly still, its hands frozen again at 11:59. The pocket watch on the floor clicked once. Not a tick. A click. The sound of something unlocking. A thin seam appeared along its edge, and the air in the room pressure shifted. A deep inhalation the house hadn't meant to make. I dropped to my knees and reached for the pocket watch. But before I touched it, the floor bulged directly beneath it, a wooden swell like a knuckle pushing upward from underneath. I froze. The bulge quivered, then split. A long, pale finger, jointed wrong, bending backward, pushed through the thin separation in the boards, groping blindly across the carpet. I recoiled, scrambling backward. Another finger followed, then a third. They curled weakly, feeling the air as though trying to remember how air worked. A voice rose through the crack, soft, exhausted, and painfully familiar. You reset the wrong hour. The fingers pressed the floor, gripping the broken wood, pulling. The boards groaned. Dust rained from between their seams. The whole foundation shuddered as something beneath it exerted weight. Slow, careful, determined, I staggered to the grandfather clock and grabbed it, shaking it wildly, slamming my hand against the frozen pendulum door. Chime, I shouted. Chime, again. Stop him. Stop him. But the clock didn't answer. The pendulum remained still. The second midnight had not come. The wrong hour held dominion now. The floor split wider. A hand emerged, thin bones wrapped in translucent skin, like the first draft of a human hand, carved in wax and forgotten in an attic for decades. The fingers spread. I bolted for the hallway, but the moment I stepped toward it, everything narrowed. The corridor constricted, walls pressed inward, door frames shrank. The house was steering me, directing me, corralling me, straight toward the clock. No, I whispered. No, let me go. Let me go. My voice cracked. Another hand surfaced through the broken floorboards. Then a wrist, an elbow, a shoulder. All wrong. All misaligned. Like someone assembling a person from memory. The voice from below rose again. Midnight wants a witness. The hallway whispered a different answer. And a door. The shadow under the floor shifted. Something enormous adjusted its weight, bracing itself to rise. I lunged toward the front door. The doorknob twisted beneath my hand, but not by my hand. It turned on its own, locked with a soft, final click. My breath hitched. Behind me, the floorboards snapped upward as the thing beneath the house lifted its upper body free. A head emerged, smooth, featureless, a blank oval of skin where a face should be. A clock's face, stripped and bare. Before the numbers were ever added, it tilted toward me, listening. Then it spoke without a mouth. You heard the first 12. The pocket watch buzzed violently. The grandfather clock trembled in response. Now hear the second 12. The floor heaved upward as the creature rose fully. A towering shape unfolding from the crawl space as though time had stored it there like an old garment. Ribs cracked back into alignment. Spine straightened. Limbs adjusted like twisting clock hands forced into position. I grabbed the only weapon near me, a brass candlestick, and hurled it at the clock. The glass shattered. The creature lunged. The world narrowed into a single point. The pendulum inside the clock swung free. Just an inch, but enough to trigger a half chime. A soft, dying note. The creature jerked as though struck by lightning. Its limbs snapped taut. Its head twitched violently. I seized the pendulum with both hands through the broken glass. Metal sliced my fingers, but I pulled with everything I had. The creature shrieked, not with sound, but with pressure. A cracking of air. I yanked the pendulum downward, and the clock chimed. Not 12, not 1. A broken, aborted, impossible chime. A sound that should not exist in the laws of any clock. The creature convulsed. The walls shook. The air rippled. A second, ghostly chime followed, thin and warped, like a memory of a chime. The creature stumbled backward toward the broken boards. I kept pulling the pendulum. Another chime. Another. Each one weaker, but each one pulling the creature closer to the gap. It clawed at the walls for balance, tearing wallpaper, grasping at empty air. Its voice fractured. Stop, don't finish, the 12. But I kept going. The clock wheezed. The gears buckled. The house rattled in sympathy. The 11th chime tore the room in half with cold. The 12th, the creature's body folded, collapsed, and was dragged downward, as though an unseen gravity beneath the house had claimed it back. It screamed, not for me, but at midnight itself. The final chime cracked the pendulum free. The creature fell. The house went silent. Dust settled, and through the broken floorboards, a final whisper drifted upward. You ended the wrong 12. Then silence. Real silence. I sank to the floor, shaking, blood dripping from my fingers. The clock hands spun wildly, then stopped. At 11:58, backing away from midnight, rewinding, resetting, saving me, or preparing something else. I didn't know, but in the fractured glass of the clock face, I saw my reflection, and behind me, in the reflection only, a second reflection, the faceless figure standing just behind my shoulder, waiting for the clock to catch up. The reflection didn't move. I did, slowly turning my head, breath held in my throat, but the space behind me was empty. No shape, no shadow, no faceless silhouette waiting with patient hunger. Only the room, silent, still, but in the cracked glass of the grandfather clock, the reflection of that faceless figure remained, standing behind me, with its head tilted gently, as if studying the back of my skull. I stepped away from the clock. The reflection stepped with me, perfectly aligned, perfectly synced, except it wasn't me. I reached behind myself blindly. Air, nothing more. But in the glass, the reflection of the figure lifted a hand, slow and deliberate, mirroring the pendulum's gentle swing. My pulse hammered. The clock hands twitched. 11:58 to 11:59. Not midnight, just the minute before it. But the air thickened as though the chimes were already swallowing the room. The faceless reflection leaned forward in the glass, closer to me, closer to the surface, closer to crossing. Its blank face pressed against the inside of the reflection like a mask looking for a wearer. And in a voice thin as dust sliding under a door, it whispered, "Only one of us has to appear in the room." I staggered back. "Stay inside the glass." The figure raised its hand again, but this time, the real clock behind the glass clicked, and the minute hand shifted a hair toward 12. The reflection's fingertip touched the glass from the inside. A faint ripple spread through it, as though the barrier were turning to water. "No, no, stop," I whispered, backing away. The room dimmed, shadows stretching long and slow. The reflection pressed harder. The glass bowed outward. A new whisper seeped through the bending surface. Gentle, almost grateful. "You saved the house's midnight, but you left mine unfinished." The minute hand lifted slightly, trembling. 11:59, flickering, trying to decide. "Don't chime," I begged the clock. "Please don't." But the grandfather clock didn't need to strike, because the reflection did. Its blank face split down the center, a seam opening like a clock door, and inside, in a darkness that shouldn't have depth, A single pendulum swung. Tick. Tock. Its voice slid through the room again, softer than breath. The next midnight is mine night. The glass cracked, just once. A thin line, from top to bottom, like the beginning of a countdown. I ran. Behind me, the final whisper followed, not from the room, not from the hall, but from directly inside the mirror-smooth surface of the pane. Don't let me reach you first. And the clock's hands, left alone on the wall, quietly advanced one last time. 11:59 at half. Story 10. The path that moved when I wasn't looking. I entered the forest just before dusk, when the sky was still a faded blue and the path ahead of me seemed steady, honest, uncomplicated. The old ranger at the outpost had warned me the trail was easy to lose at night, but I thought he meant shadows, fog, maybe a steep bend I should watch for. I didn't know the path had a will of its own. It first happened casually. I glanced down to tie my boot, looked up again, and the dirt trail that had run straight north a second earlier was now curving gently west, as if it had always been that way. I frowned, tired eyes. Simple mistake. But as I followed it deeper into the trees, the forest began to lean in around me, branches tilting, trunks subtly angled, like an audience shifting in their seats. And then I heard the sound, a soft, delicate crunch of leaves, not behind me, not ahead of me, but exactly beside me, perfectly in step, a presence matching my pace. When I turned to look, the path shifted again, repositioning itself, moving me away from whatever kept walking beside my footsteps. The sound beside me didn't stop when the path moved. If anything, it adjusted, a soft crush of leaves, half a heartbeat after mine, as though something were learning the rhythm of my steps and correcting its timing. I slowed. It slowed. I stopped breathing. It didn't. A faint exhale drifted from the trees to my left. Warm, damp, uncomfortably close. The breath of something that had lungs, or something that had learned to imitate lungs. I kept my eyes forward. The path ahead curved again. A gentle bend. Nothing abrupt, but I'd just seen it bend moments earlier in the opposite direction. Impossible. I knelt, pretending to check my boot again. The forest floor was thick with tangled roots and fallen branches, but the dirt path was smooth, too smooth, as though fingers had combed it into place. Only moments before I looked down. When I stood, the crunching beside me resumed. This time, I didn't move. I just listened. Crunch. Crunch. Not heavy. Not dragging, but deliberate. Curious. I finally forced myself to glance sideways. Slow, careful, turning only my eyes. There was nothing there. Only two birch trees leaning slightly toward me, their white bark peeling like old paint. Between them, low shrubs rustled with a lazy breeze. And yet, the leaves beneath the shrubs were pressed flat, freshly flattened, in a trail parallel to the path. Something had been walking beside me, exactly beside me, footfall for footfall. A chill curled down my spine. "Hello," I whispered, quietly enough that the forest wouldn't echo it. The wind answered, brief, cold, pushing through the trees in the wrong direction. Against the natural slope of the land, the path responded instantly. It shifted, not quickly, never quickly, but with a slow, thoughtful intention. The curve stretched deeper to the west. Roots beside my feet slithered under the soil, burrowing down and away, as if giving the path room to move. I stepped backward in shock. The path slid subtly forward, not toward me, away, guiding or protecting. A new crunch of leaves sounded to my left, closer now, only a few steps away. I spun toward the noise. Nothing, just the birches, the shrubs, the carpet of leaves. But the flattened trail in the leaves, the one that had matched my stride perfectly, was deeper now, sharper, as though the thing walking there had leaned closer. I felt it before I heard it, a presence shifting its weight. The forest pressed in, leaning, listening. The path moved again, in a slow, graceful arc toward the south. An invitation, a nudge, a silent plea. Keep walking. Don't look for it. Don't let it catch up. My breath trembled out of me. I stepped onto the shifted trail, and the footsteps beside me fell perfectly in line. Once more, half a beat late, carefully measured, learning me. The deeper I walked, the more the forest seemed to tune itself to my pulse. Every branch, every breath of wind, every subtle shift of shadow fell into the same slow, rhythmic pattern, a pattern that didn't belong to the night, but to the thing walking half a beat behind me. Crunch, 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 always just out of sync, always learning. At first the sound was faint, like someone brushing their fingertips along fallen leaves. But as the trees thickened and the canopy lowered, the footsteps beside me grew clearer, to sharper, more confident, like whatever walked there was adjusting its weight, discovering how to step more naturally, and each time it became more certain. The path shifted again, subtle corrections, tiny adjustments, a curve here, a widening there, a soft rise where the ground had been level only moments before. Not random, not natural. I realized, with a kind of quiet horror, that the path was not leading me anywhere. It was leading me away, away from the creature learning to walk with me. I slowed. The path hesitated, the earth pausing mid-breath, before stretching a few inches farther uphill, as if urging me to keep going. But the footsteps to my left didn't hesitate. Crunch, crunch. Then, a second set, lighter, shorter, another being falling into step. No, it was the same creature, experimenting, trying a different way of placing its weight. A low, dragging whisper of bark rubbing against bark moved above me, from tree to tree, as if the branches themselves were turning their heads to watch. I felt eyes, billions of them, but none of them human. The wind rose without warning, not a breeze, but a sudden, decisive gust that shoved the fog sideways. The footsteps beside me stumbled. Whatever it wasn't perfect yet, and the forest reacted. Trees groaned, shrubs twisted. The path lurched violently 2 feet to the right, a full-bodied shift that sent dust spinning the air. I gasped and staggered backward. The footsteps beside me followed, late, confused, then halted. Silence. Total silence. The wind died instantly, as if the entire forest had just inhaled sharply, and was holding its breath. I turned my head, just a little, just enough to glance sideways. A cluster of ferns trembled. Only one spot, not the whole circle, not the wind, just that one patch, as though something crouched low, hiding its body behind them, learning how to be still. Then, snap, a twig broke behind the ferns. Soft, not aggressive, but deliberate. I froze. Another twig snapped, closer to me this time. Then a third, and that's when I realized it wasn't stepping. It was testing how loud a twig could break before I reacted. Testing which sounds I ignored, which made me tense, which made me move. It was studying me, the way a predator studies the hesitation of prey. I swallowed, throat tight. Stop, I whispered shakily. Everything obeyed, even the leaves, even the air. Then, a breath, right beside my ear. Warm, human-shaped, but wrong. The voice that came with it wasn't even a voice, just the first attempt at one. A scraped exhale, pushing through a throat that hadn't learned words yet. H-H-H-H-A. Trying, failing, trying again. Behind me, the trees leaned closer, their trunks cracking softly as they bent, forming a wall, closing off retreat. The path in front of me stretched, too far, too quickly, as if desperately urging me forward. The creature's next exhale landed against the side of my neck, warm, wet, close, and this time, the sound escaping its growing voice almost formed my steps' rhythm. Kurr, unch. My breath left me in a shiver. The path shifted again, but not away this time. It moved toward something, downhill, toward deeper dark, toward where the creature's steps had become heavier. For the first time, I felt the path's intention slip, not protecting me, warning me, or pleading. The creature's next step matched mine perfectly, not half a beat behind, not late, not learning, perfect. And as it walked in time with me, the whisper finally came clear, a single, almost coherent word, shaped by my own footsteps. Wait. The word hung in the dark between the trees, a trembling, newborn sound, as if the forest itself had tried to speak through a throat not meant for speech. Wait. I stiffened. The path shifted under my boots, a soft ripple of soil, moving like muscle beneath skin. It angled sharply now, not gently, a sudden curve to the right, as if shoving me away from where the voice had come from. But the creature walked in perfect rhythm beside me. No more half-beat, no more stagger. Its steps landed exactly when mine did, as though we shared the same bones. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Don't, I whispered. I didn't know who I was speaking to. The creature, the path, or the forest holding its breath around me. Another warm exhale brushed my cheek. Closer, far closer than before. I turned my head slowly. I didn't see a face. I didn't see a form. But I saw the ferns bend inward, as though something pressed its weight from the inside of them, leaning toward me in a shape that didn't belong to any animal I knew. The air thickened. The leaves trembled. Something shifted its weight, right beside me. The path jerked again, a violent, panicked lurch that tore small roots from the soil. It curved around sharply, a desperate hook, pointing me toward a narrow gap between thick cedar trunks. A way out, or at least a way away. My instincts screamed at me to run. The creature took a step with me. Crunch, crunch, exact, perfect. Then it stopped. Not because I stopped, because something else moved. The trees swayed. Branches bent inward as if pushed by a wind I couldn't feel. The forest closed around us, forming a ring of trunks that leaned in like watchers, forming a circle. The path froze. The creature exhaled again. This time, a little too sharply, a little too eager. A whisper followed, closer to language now. Stet, to stay. My pulse hammered. No, I breathed. I'm not staying here. The forest answered with a different sound. A deep, resonant creak. Old wood shifting, age cracking through bark. Something large moved behind me. I spun, but it wasn't the creature. It was the path. The dirt beneath my feet tightened, compacting, hardening into a ridge that rose like the spine of something struggling to keep me upright. A push, a shove. Go. Go now. The creature beside me shifted, matching my turn, mirroring my stance. But this time, its balance faltered, barely. A slight lag in its movement, a fraction of hesitation, like it had never turned its head before, and wasn't certain how to move the rest of its body with it. That tiny pause was the first real glimpse of weakness I'd seen. I stepped backward slowly. Its steps tried to match mine. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Late, sloppy. The path buckled beneath my boots, forming a shallow downward slope, as if creating a ramp away from the creature. The ferns behind it rippled, not from wind, from something rising inside them. I didn't wait to see. I ran. The path surged forward under my feet like moving sand, every step landing on soil that flowed just ahead of me, reshaping itself into a narrow escape route. Behind me, the footsteps followed, no longer careful, no longer learning, chasing. Crunch, C-R-U-N-C-H, crunch, C-R-U-N-C-H, C-R-U-N-C-H. Wrong rhythm. Growing heavier, growing faster. Stop. I gasped at the path. Stop curve. Turn. Something. Please. The path obeyed. It bent sharply left. Too sharply. I slammed into a low branch. Stumbled. Caught myself. And heard the creature hit the forest floor hard behind me. A clumsy, human-like fall through leaves and broken twigs. But it didn't cry out. It didn't grunt. It laughed. A wet, breathy chuckle. A sound it shouldn't be able to make. A sound it learned by listening to me choke on air moments before. I froze in terror. The path tugged at my feet, pulling forward like a current. But the forest around me leaned toward the sound of that laugh, like every tree wanted to hear it again. And the creature rose from the ferns, slowly, wrongly, limbs unfolding at angles that didn't belong in any forest I knew. Its shape shifting as it pushed itself upright, too tall, too thin, neck extending like a branch bending under its own weight. It took a step, and this time, its footfall matched the exact rhythm of the panicked breaths in my chest. Do, aunt, run. Its voice scraped through the leaves, almost human. Almost. The path quivered beneath me, gathering itself like a live thing ready to sprint. The forest held its breath. The creature took one more step, and the path whispered a sound I'd never heard before. A soft, pleading shift, a tremor of exhaustion, as if it could not keep running forever, as if it needed me to choose now. Run into the darkness, or face the thing learning how to follow me. I took one step, the creature took one step, and the trees around us all leaned closer, waiting to see who moved first. The forest waited, a stillness so absolute it felt staged, as though every branch, every trunk, every grain of soil paused mid-breath to watch what I would do next. My heartbeat thudded loud enough to echo. The creature's breath rasped beside me, trying, failing, trying again to match the rise and fall of my chest. I forced myself to inhale slowly, one long, steady breath. The creature imitated it perfectly. Then I exhaled, trembling, and the creature exhaled too. That was the moment I realized. It wasn't chasing me to kill me. It was chasing me to be me. The path beneath my boots softened, curving gently forward, not panicked now, not urgently dragging me away, but coaxing, like a hand at my back encouraging me to keep moving. The creature didn't lunge. It didn't close the gap. It simply stood there, tall and impossibly narrow, a silhouette stitched from branches and shadow, head bowed as though waiting for permission to follow. Slowly, step by cautious step, I moved forward. The path firmed beneath me, taking shape again in long, steady strokes. A return to normalcy, or whatever passed for normal in this forest. The creature mirrored me, but with a slight delay now, as though my calm confused it. Crunch, 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 crunch. Tentative, unsure. We walked in a fragile truce. The trees around us relaxed their lean, returning to their original posture. Branches uncurled overhead. The oppressive silence loosened, letting in the faintest hum of night insects. The forest seemed relieved, not of me, but of the tension, as though it had feared what would happen if the creature finally learned my stride perfectly. After a few minutes of careful walking, I noticed the path widening, not shifting harshly, not twisting in panic, just widening, opening into a broad stretch of dirt that felt safe. A clearing, the canopy above thinned, letting moonlight spill across the ground in pale ribbons. The soft glow illuminated tall grasses swaying gently in a real breeze, not the forest's held breath, but honest wind. I stepped into the clearing. The world brightened. The creature stopped at the tree line, as though it couldn't cross, or wouldn't. It stood half hidden behind a cedar trunk, body bent at an angle no human spine could hold, one long arm gripping the bark, watching me, waiting. I exhaled slowly, relief blooming in my chest, warm and fragile. For the first time since entering the forest, I felt safe. I dropped to my knees in the tall grass, letting the cool blades brush against my palms. The moonlight on my skin felt real, an anchor to something familiar, something human. The wind carried the scent of pine and damp soil, ordinary smell, comforting. Behind me, the creature shifted its weight, but did not enter the clearing. I risked a glance back. It stood completely still, too still, as though imitating the trees around it, blending its long limbs into the vertical lines of the forest. Not moving, not approaching, just watching. My heartbeat slowed to something manageable. The path no longer shifted. It lay steady behind me, a soft curve leading deeper into the trees. But at peace, everything calmed, everything settled, everything felt right. The creature tilted its head, and for the first time, the movement wasn't predatory, nor hungry. It was curious, almost hesitant, almost gentle. A strange tenderness crept into its posture, as though it were grateful I'd stopped running. Slowly, very slowly, it took one step back, retreating deeper into shadow, as though giving me space, as though offering peace. I let out a shaky laugh, the absurdity of relief washing over me. "You're not following anymore," I whispered. The creature didn't respond. The wind rustled through the grass. A few fireflies blinked lazily near the far end of the clearing, soft golden dots drifting like tired embers. For the first time, the forest felt almost beautiful. I lay back in the grass, letting my body sink into the earth. The sky stretched open above me, a quilt of stars, soft and indifferent. My eyelids grew heavy. The exhaustion of fear finally caught up, pressing me into the cool ground. I listened to the breeze, to the rustle of leaves, to the distant sigh of branches settling. The creature didn't follow. The path stayed still. The clearing felt safe, and I allowed myself, just for a moment, to close my eyes. As sleep drifted near, I heard the forest breathe out, content, satisfied, safe. Then, faintly, soft as a leaf brushing my ear, crunch from the tall grass right beside me. Not at the tree line, not behind me, but next to my hip, where the grass had flattened, in a perfect, human-length imprint, as though something had lain down beside me, imitating me, learning rest, the same way it had learned walk. And when the grass rustled lightly again, the sound almost formed a whisper. "Stay." The word seeped through the grass beside me, soft, trembling, more breath than sound. "Stay." My eyes snapped open. The clearing was quiet, moonlit, still, but the tall grass to my right shifted in a long, slow ripple, a movement too controlled to be wind, and the flattened shape beside me was unmistakable now, a long indentation, body length, curving exactly the way mine did when I lay down, as though the creature had studied my posture and replicated it perfectly. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The grass rustled again, a single blade bending, then another, as something unseen adjusted its position. A warm exhale brushed my cheek, closer than before, far closer. I rolled away instinctively. The grass behind me rose, then fell, as though something heavy had lifted its head. When I moved, I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. The clearing, moments ago peaceful, now felt like a trap laying open beneath a sky too still. The creature hadn't stayed at the tree line. It had simply learned a new way to follow me, without steps, without sound, without shape. By becoming still, I backed away carefully. The grass tracked me, a quiet ripple moving parallel to my steps, following the line of my ankle, never exactly touching, but never more than a pace away. "Stay," it breathed again from somewhere inside the ripples. I spun toward the path. It was still behind me. steady, unshifting, as though exhausted from guiding me earlier. But it didn't reshape now. It didn't widen, or curve, or point. It simply waited for me to choose. I stepped toward it. The grass beside me surged, a shuddering movement, as though something inside it rose to kneeling height. I ran. Immediately, the creature matched my pace. Not through leaves now, not through footsteps, but through pure proximity. The grass moved beside me, like a second shadow, rippling faster and faster, learning how to run, the way it had learned how to walk. The path responded too late. It shifted, but sluggishly, a tired rearrangement of soil that couldn't keep up with my panic. I followed anyway. Branches whipped my arms as I plunged back into the forest. The trees, once protective, now leaned away from me, not guiding, but warning. The footsteps returned. They erupted beside me, messy at first, then accelerating. Crunch, 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 crunch. The creature no longer hesitated. It didn't mimic. It pursued, as if my attempt to sleep beside it had convinced it we were the same. The forest twisted into a blur. The path tried. It truly tried, shoving itself beneath my boots, dragging roots aside, flattening mounds, stretching forward desperately. But the creature kept pace. Every step of mine birthed an echo step beside me. Not late now. Not learning, but equal, perfect, like a twin running in lockstep. I choked on a breath. Stop. Stop following me. The echo step trembled, slowed, then corrected itself, back into perfect sync. The creature whispered through the dark, "Don't run alone." I veered off the path. The path followed me, shifting violently left to stay under my feet. The creature followed too. A long, sharp hiss tore through the ferns ahead as the thing surged closer, brush whipping aside as though its body were stretching, lengthening to match my speed. My lungs burned. My pulse hammered. The trees thinned abruptly, opening to a rocky slope I didn't recognize. Not part of the original route. Not part of any safe trail. The path behind me tried to correct itself, tried to drag shape into the rocks, but the stone resisted. There was nowhere left for it to go, no soil to bend, no leaves to cover its shifts. And for the first time, the path seemed frightened. The creature surged ahead on my left, overtaking me by inches, its presence a cold press against my ribs. I staggered toward the slope, sliding on loose gravel, as the forest roared behind me, trees shaking, roots tearing, the entire wood seeming to panic. It wasn't the creature that frightened it. It was me leaving the path. The creature matched my fall perfectly, lowering as I stumbled, tilting with me, matching my angle, as if my balance were a lesson it needed to master. In real time, I grabbed at the rocks, pulling myself downward desperately. The creature's breath hit my back, warm, insistent, almost protective. Stay. Don't. Prove fall. It tried to adjust its body to catch me, mirroring my posture, learning how to break a fall. But it didn't have bones. Not the right kind. Not the right angles. It collapsed beside me in a violent shudder of movement, its limbs bending through the grass unnaturally, as though it were folding itself back down to the shape of a human. I tumbled free of it, rolling to the base of the slope, lungs tearing from the impact. The creature rose slowly behind me, like tall grass lifting around an invisible body. It stepped closer, 1 pace, 2, then it stopped. The forest had ended. The path couldn't move onto the rock, and the creature seemed unable to follow me. Off the breathable ground, we stared at each other, me heaving for air, it swaying gently in a shape made from darkness and long grass. Then it whispered, "You're too far. I can't hear your steps." Its voice trembled, broken, childlike. "Come back." I shook my head. "You have to stay there." The creature tilted its head, uncomprehending. Then, slowly, it lifted one long arm, trying to mimic a human reaching. The moment its fingers brushed the stone, the creature convulsed, as though the rock burned it. The tall grass around its form wilted instantly. The forest shuddered in sympathy, and the creature whispered in a hollow, distant voice, "I can't follow you, unless you come back." Behind it, the path curled inward like a frightened animal, recoiling on itself. The forest leaned forward, trees bowing, as if begging me not to return. I stepped backward. The creature's form stretched desperately toward me, limbs lengthening with panic, voice cracking into a plea. "Don't leave alone." I turned, and I ran down the rocky slope as its footsteps screamed into the soil behind me, not chasing, but collapsing, learning its last lesson, that I could leave it. That I had left. The forest swallowed its cries. The path did not follow. I didn't stop running until the moonlight broke fully through the trees, and the world ahead of me no longer shifted. With my steps, I didn't look back until the trees thinned into the first signs of another trail. A real trail, solid and unshifting, cut clean through the forest years ago by human hands. Gravel, not soil. Markers, not shadows. A path that didn't breathe beneath my feet. I collapsed onto it, letting the cold stones bite into my palms. My lungs felt raw, my legs shook, but the silence, the normal silence, felt like a blessing. Leaves rustled far behind me, in a slow, defeated ripple, the last faint sign of whatever I'd left behind. The urge to run returned, but exhaustion won. I leaned against a trail post and forced myself to breathe. "You're out," I whispered to the empty air. "You made it." No footsteps answered. No voice mimicked. No grass rose to shape itself around me. Only the night. Only peace. I stood and followed the gravel path toward the distant glow of the ranger's outpost lantern. With each step, the forest felt more ordinary, more honest, more still, until I realized the stones under my boots were changing color, not shifting, not sliding, but darkening, a slow, creeping stain, damp. I crouched and touched one of the darkened stones. My fingers came away wet, not with water, with dew. No, too warm, too heavy. I wiped my hand on my jeans, heart pounding again. Ahead of me, the path curved gently, a familiar curve, one I had seen before, one that had never belonged to gravel, only to forest soil. My stomach tightened. The trail sign beside me, the one pointing toward the outpost, tilted, just slightly, as though nudged by something beneath it. And from the trees behind me, far, far behind, A faint sound traveled through the night. Crunch, crunch, half a beat late. Learning again. No, not learning. Searching, trying to find my rhythm. In the new surface, I stood perfectly still. The crunching paused. Then, 2 crunches. A guess. A test. I stepped once. A single gravel crack beneath my boot. And after a moment, crunch, perfectly matched. A whisper drifted from impossibly far through the dark trees, threading itself into the wind. I can hear you again. The gravel path beneath me shifted, not dramatically, not like the forest soil, but just enough to betray the truth. This wasn't the old human trail. It was my path, following me out. I froze in place. The whisper came again, closer this time, almost tender. Don't run alone. And the stones behind me softened, sank, as though the earth remembered footsteps and wanted to learn them all over again. And now, listener, if you're still awake, take a slow breath with me. These forests, these roads, these rooms, these echoes that walk beside us in the dark, they only linger when someone is here to listen. Every story tonight has left a small footprint just outside your door, a sound in the hallway, a shift in the trees, a breath that didn't quite belong to you. But don't worry. Let the night hold you gently. Let the dark settle around your shoulders. Let sleep find you before anything else does. And when you wake, if the path looks a little different, or the clock reads a time you don't remember, or the footsteps in your room feel half a beat late, just smile. It means the next story has already begun. Good night, listener. Sleep softly, and try not to listen too closely to the sounds just outside your window.